Stick with me. This story starts with a lucky die landing on a perfect 6. A herald shouts for joy, demanding applause for the man's incredible luck. Watching the crowd cheer, our confused soul wonders where on earth he has ended up. The figure standing before him explains that he has died, and this dice roll decides his next life. That lucky challenger rolled a 6, meaning he will be reborn as a legendary hero in the kingdom. Now it is our main character's turn to roll for his fate. He throws the dice with every ounce of his soul, but unfortunately, he lands on the absolute worst result imaginable. The herald screams that he rolled a 1, and the crowd mocks his truly pathetic luck. As his stats appear, the voice announces he will spend his next life as a lowly peasant. While the soul despairs, the herald explains his life will be brutal thanks to that single unlucky roll. He begs for another chance as he falls, but we suddenly cut to an academy hall where someone calls for Dante. Suddenly, a cruel young lord slaps Dante across the face. As he curses his own name, the noble starts kicking him into the dirt. This arrogant noble snarls about not receiving the specific wine he had demanded. Dante apologizes while being stomped into the ground. He opens the flask, muttering that someone has to drink it. The bullies laugh as they pour the entire drink over Dante's head. Lying in the mud, he feels defeated, certain his life was doomed from the roll and that nothing will ever change. Now pay attention. As he walks away in shame, he sees a light, and it is a breathtaking noble lady. He wonders how a commoner like him could even exist near her. Their eyes meet, and our poor protagonist hides his face in pure shame. A friend explains that Lady Isabella is the most beautiful girl in the entire academy. She rejects every suitor, which secretly pleases him, because if he cannot have her, then nobody else should. Just imagining another man winning her heart one day is enough to give him a heart attack from jealousy. He thinks you would need to save the entire kingdom in a past life to deserve a girl like her. Suddenly, someone legendary walks past him in the hall. The cruel noble orders our protagonist to go fetch some fresh bread for him immediately. Dante mutters to himself about how the young lord always forgets to eat his breakfast at the manor. Lady Isabella stops him, asking where he is heading while the master is coming. Dante is completely at a loss for words. Dante turns bright red and lies, claiming the food is for himself. He gets incredibly nervous when she casually mentions that the special academy bread tastes amazing. With a trembling soul, the protagonist asks if she would like him to buy some for her. Dante walks down the stairs, dying of embarrassment over the stupid thing he just blurted out. Even so, the thought of Isabella saying his name makes him glow. Back in the hall, all the students are buzzing about a new noble arrival. He introduces himself as Sir Tristan. The ladies have heard bards sing of his glory and beg him to perform. Meanwhile, Dante gets lashed by the cruel noble because the instructor has already started the lesson without them. Feeling miserable about the new student, Dante looks crushed and feels even worse when Tristan sits right next to him. You and I can see he is burning with envy, wondering if Tristan is just trying to mock him. He is handsome with noble features. The only thing they share is the roll of the dice. He wonders if this knight saved the kingdom in a past life to be born so perfect, but his bullies call for him. They scold him for being late with their rations, while Tristan watches the entire miserable scene play out. Everyone flocks to Tristan, showering him with praise. Dante watches as the golden boy excels at every martial art and study. He wonders how one person can be perfect at everything. Things impossible for Dante are just normal moments in Tristan's grand life. A fellow student tells the handsome knight that the headmaster wishes to speak with him immediately. Watching them get along so effortlessly, Dante feels like he does not even belong in this royal reality. He thought he would be happy watching from the shadows, but suddenly, he runs away with his eyes closed. But he trips, spilling all the bread in the dirt. People see him, but they just walk past without helping. Dante stays silent, completely overwhelmed by the shame and his own emotions. The cruel noble is furious about the new student and kicks Dante for spilling the food, ordering him to go fetch it all again. Soon, the noble and his cronies beat him senseless. Covered in wounds, Dante enters his room to find Tristan using a magical scroll. Dante sees him relaxing and mutters about how perfect his life must be. Tristan worries about his injuries, but Dante pushes him away. That's where we leave it, trust me, it only gets wilder. All right, you and I are about to dive into a story where our main character is at rock bottom, wishing he was born a high-ranking noble like Lord Theodore. Theodore looks at him and asks what he would change if given the chance. Arthur tells him to stop because nothing ever changes for commoners, but Theodore gets serious and says he can remake him into any man he desires. Our protagonist stares back, as if he finally saw a flicker of hope in his dark life. This mysterious noble asks if he wants to play a game, while our hero realizes his own life stats are the absolute worst in this entire kingdom. It feels like fate, being born to lose while watching the highborn winners take everything he ever wanted. Wiping his tears, Arthur asks about this game, while Theodore stares coldly out at the training grounds. He speaks of this ancient academy and its stone halls, making Arthur feel uneasy as he listens. Theodore says the elite only act kind to show off their status, but they will quickly use or ignore anyone they deem beneath them in this kingdom. He asks if that is truly fair, leaving our protagonist terrified and wondering why a noble would even say such things. Theodore claims he feels the same way, while Arthur worries that this noble is acting like a completely different person. He asks Arthur if he would despise commoners if he were handsome and powerful, living a life of fame as if he were someone else. Then he mentions that changing your fate could be as simple as a game. Don't blink here, because Arthur is about to ask if this magic is real, while Theodore simply questions if the boy is brave enough to believe him. Suddenly, Lady Elinor enters, complaining that her magic practice took too long, only to find the two men staring at each other. She is shocked to see Arthur there, and immediately notices the bruises on his face. Our unfortunate hero realizes their paths were always destined to cross, and Elinor asks if they were in the middle of a duel. Theodore flashes a fake, charming smile and claims they were just having a conversation. Frustrated by the sudden tension, Arthur grabs his gear and bolts out of the hall, leaving the confused noble calling after him to wait. Elinor asks if she interrupted something important, but Theodore quickly lies and says everything is perfectly fine. His magical stone begins to glow with messages, revealing that the mission failed because the low-tier servant ran away out of pure spite. The next message asks if he wants to abandon the quest, while his companion looks at the glowing text. He replies that everyone is playing for power these days, as we see his real goal was recruiting our hero. A new option appears: change the quest to making the most beautiful noblewoman in the kingdom fall for him. Okay, I know what you are thinking, but check this out. Everything is about to change as Arthur runs home. Back at his cottage, Arthur tries to study his scrolls but throws them aside, cursing himself for being such a total idiot. He wonders if Theodore and Elinor are courting, since they always seem to be leaving the academy together. He imagines them together in the palace, even though there is no proof they actually went home as a couple. Suddenly, a storm breaks and Arthur rushes outside to bring in the laundry before it gets soaked by the rain. As he steps into the downpour, he cannot stop thinking about the strange offer he received at the academy. While washing up, Arthur feels uneasy, recalling those words and wondering if a commoner like him could truly change his life. Staring at his reflection, he sees a plain face and a weak spirit, concluding that such a transformation is simply impossible. He mutters that the noble was wasting his time, just as someone starts pounding loudly on his front door. He opens it to find his mother collapsed on the ground, completely drunk and soaked by the freezing evening rain. She swears she has not been drinking, claiming she only went out because she felt so sad. Arthur knows this routine and quietly helps her up, but as the dark night falls, the crushing emptiness of his life makes him believe nothing will ever change. At the academy, the arrogant squires order Arthur to fetch their heavy training gear. While walking down the stone stairs, he runs into Elinor and offers a shy greeting, feeling embarrassed about yesterday. But Alina asks him to wait, telling him she was genuinely worried about his safety after their last meeting. As our shy protagonist hides in the shadows of the hallway, she begins to ask him about those fresh injuries. She wonders if he fought with Theodore and worries that she might be the reason for their conflict, but Arthur denies it. He lies and says he simply tripped, thanking her for actually caring enough to ask about a commoner like him. Arthur looks at her, as if she were a divine light in the middle of his miserable and dark existence. He feels completely out of place, talking to the girl of his dreams, and looks down at his boots, trembling. So what do you and I take from this cliffhanger? Just when he finally tries to speak to her, someone suddenly screams that a massive fight is breaking out right now. All right, stick with me. You're about to see how a nobody becomes the most feared student at the academy. The news hits like a brick, and Alina immediately sprints off to save him. Dante tries to follow her, but he wipes out and hits the floor like a sack of bricks. He scrambles up, fighting back tears of worry. Word of the showdown is spreading through the halls like wildfire now. A massive crowd is already swarming toward the rooftop. They're all expecting a total slaughter once the gang gets their hands on him. Dante hears rumors that the loser will be stripped of their house rank. He wonders if Julian has a death wish, but he's mostly stung by how Alina didn't even look back. Reaching the top floor, he has to fight his way through a wall of spectators. He finds Alina, who's breathless and apologetic, but he's just confused why the actual rooftop looks completely deserted. A guard at the door stops them, saying the Blackwood bastards won't let anyone pass this door. Pay close attention here. The fear in this guy's eyes tells you exactly how high the stakes are. From above, the sounds of brutal impacts start echoing down. Alina wants to help, but everyone else is too paralyzed by fear to move. She decides to go alone, but Dante suddenly shouts for her to stop right where she is. Shaking like a leaf, Dante blocks her path and says he'll go instead. He claims he is used to their beatings anyway. The hallway goes dead silent as they all watch him climb the stairs. Only Alina looks like she actually cares if he comes back in one piece. For Dante, this feels like just another day of being the Academy's favorite target for the Blackwood gang. He opens the door to a flash of light, finding the thugs unconscious while Julian stands there with a glowing cube. Dante stares at the blood on Julian's hands. In total shock, he asks if one guy really managed to take down the whole group alone. The gang leader crawls up from his forced nap, demanding to know what trick Julian used before his hand gets crushed. Julian looks down and tells the thug to stop whining. He delivers another kick, demanding silence. Dante tries to intervene, saying they've had enough. Julian just grins and asks if we don't find this absolutely thrilling. Julian keeps stomping them, claiming that leading a gang doesn't make them gods. Dante is terrified by the cold, strange behavior Julian is showing. Julian simply shrugs and says this is all just a game. Dante argues that life isn't a game, but Julian just laughs and says things would be much better if it were. A notification pops up on his phone, mission complete, clean up the trash. He just walks away. Dante chases him, desperate for answers, but he's quickly drowned out by the crowd praising Julian for finally stopping the bullies. He's left standing there, watching the girl he loves worry over the new hero. Everyone is swarming around the winner. And let's be honest, you saw that coming. No one remembers Dante's courage, only the new hero's power. He lowers his head, realizing he'll never be the knight in shining armor. He remembers Julian saying life is cruel, that your looks and noble status dictate exactly how the world treats you. Seeing the crowd now, he knows it is true. Dante wonders if that game Julian mentioned might actually be real, but he shakes the thought away. In a real game, he'd just be a level 1 peasant with no way to ever change his stats. It would be a nightmare. Only those born into high noble houses get to say that life is just a game. He looks at Alina, wondering why she can't see that Julian isn't the saint she thinks he is. Someone asks if they're a couple. They deny it, even though they're still holding hands. Dante vows to expose Julian's true face and protect her at all costs. By the end of the day, classes are over. Julian and Alina leave together while our jealous protagonist stalks them through the shadows. A speeding van almost hits her, but Julian pulls her close to protect her. Dante watches, fuming with envy. She whispers her thanks, and they stay locked in that embrace. Dante nearly loses it, thinking they're about to kiss, until a phone vibration finally breaks the tension. Julian checks a message and looks stressed. He tells her his brother is locked out and he needs to hurry home. And that's where we leave it. Trust me, you and I won't want to miss what happens next. Arthur watches his every move, debating if he should keep tailing the noble. You and I are about to see if our hero can actually catch Julian in the act. We see Julian's secret. He was using a communication crystal to receive a quest from the hidden oracle. Night falls as Arthur wonders where they're going. They enter a stone spire, far from Julian's grand manor. Staying one floor below, he creeps forward into the shadows. They reach the top floor. The handsome lordling heads to the ramparts and throws open the heavy door. Arthur observes from the doorway. Julian stands there as if waiting for a meeting, speaking through his crystal. There he stays, staring at a message. He's irritated, but he's not leaving yet. Arthur is starving and losing strength. Then, disaster. His crystal vibrates, emitting a sharp, metallic sound. He grabs the crystal, hoping Julian didn't hear. It's just a message from a lowly scribe with a note. In that moment, he's just grateful for the intel. Suddenly, the air fills with mystical purple and pink light. A glowing artifact catches his eye. Wondering what it could be, he reaches out to claim the treasure. Suddenly, Julian bursts through the door. "Who goes there?" Arthur is caught. Now pay attention, the frantic chase is about to begin. Back at his chambers, Arthur gasps for air. His crystal begins flashing with new, urgent missives. An unknown voice asks if he saw a specter. Arthur yells back, "Was that Julian?" The voice says it's not the lordling, then tells him to light his candles since he's home. That terrifies him. He starts shouting, searching every corner of the room for the intruder. The oracle calls him a stalker. It asks if he wants to know its secrets, then jokes about gold. When the boy doesn't laugh, the mysterious voice realizes he's actually quite timid. The oracle stops teasing and calls itself X. It can see him because of the artifact he stole. X asks if he remembers the moment he took it. We see Arthur grabbing the glowing sacred die. He picks up the prize, just as Julian throws open the door. Sensing something is wrong, Julian demands the die from the lowly squire. Arthur surprisingly gives a simple, "okay." But watch this. Our clever hero pulls a fast one and bolts with the artifact. He doesn't know its power, but he won't yield. His only real skill is running like the wind. He sees the exit and thinks he's safe, but Julian suddenly appears, blocking his path like a wall. Arthur takes a heavy blow to the gut. He's thrown backward, crashing against a stone archway. He rolls on the ground like a sack of grain, struggling to rise while coughing. Julian clenches his gauntlets and demands the die. Arthur retorts, asking for an explanation first. Julian's fist shatters the stone wall. He asks if he wants to play a game amidst the ruins. The game is simple. How long can the thief hold out before surrendering the prize? Terrified, Arthur remembers why he followed him. He won't give up until he exposes the Lord's secrets. Arthur stands and sprints. He threatens to throw the worthless item away. But he's caught. The two of them grapple desperately for the glowing die. They hit the floor, struggling. The die slips and rolls, leaving Julian in a state of pure shock. The die glows pink. Arthur is mesmerized by the shift. His crystal begins chiming again. X congratulates him on becoming a player. Back at home, he wonders what this object truly means. Our hero picks up the die, examining every facet of the mysterious artifact. It changed color after rolling, and Julian stopped the hunt. The oracle asks why he's so restless. Arthur has questions. What are these dice? How are you watching my every move? X says it's a long story. The basics. That die is a key that changes everything. Arthur recalls when he learned the world is cruel. Kind words are just empty air. The High Lords live in a different world entirely. He accepted that harsh truth long ago. Arthur stays silent, wary of 𝒐𝒌. So, what do you and I think? Is 𝒐𝒌 really an ally? You and I are watching a boy whose life changes with one die. 𝒐𝒌 tells Arthur he is just a watcher. Arthur asks if 𝒐𝒌 is a god since this power seems impossible. The system gets annoyed by all the questions and tells him to check his desk and pull out an old alchemy tome. When he grabs the book and flips it open to page 351, he sees a famous scholar and reads a quote about how the divine does not play dice. 𝒐𝒌 explains that he is no god, just an administrator of this game. The system asks if he has any more questions about the magic die. Arthur thinks for a moment, still not fully convinced by any of this. 𝒐𝒌 says he will explain it in a way that even a simpleton like him can finally understand. The system asks if he likes playing games. Arthur says he plays occasionally, then asks why games are actually considered fun. Arthur thinks it is about destruction, but 𝒐𝒌 explains that games have quests and rewards. These rewards make you stronger on your epic journey. He says it is exciting to think you can achieve anything if you try. How could a miserable real life ever beat a game? To have a life better than a game, you would need to be born a high noble or have legendary talent. With a die, your life becomes the game. More dice mean better attributes, and higher rolls mean you get more points to spend. Arthur asks if he can improve any skill. 𝒐𝒌 says it covers everything from physical strength to his noble appearance and even wisdom. Watch this. As the system explains quests, Arthur remembers all Tristan has done lately. With every quest delivered via a magical message, you get rewarded with dice. The blue dice can be held by anyone but turn red when rolled. Once the die is rolled, it belongs to the player along with the specific number of points it landed on. Through a process called synchronization, the system lets you boost any stat. Once complete, the die turns white and the power is yours. Arthur says the names sound like something from a cheap tavern game. 𝒐𝒌 says it is actually quite simple. Just finish your quests, earn your dice, and change your world. Arthur asks if the same thing happened to his rival, Tristan. The system just laughs and shows him a magical vision. Arthur asks who that ugly person is, and 𝒐𝒌 tells him to look in a mirror. 𝒐𝒌 reveals that was actually Tristan not long ago. He asks when Tristan started collecting dice, and 𝒐𝒌 says right before he joined the academy. Arthur thinks the whole thing is absurd, especially since Alina does not know a single thing about it. Strange noises come from his chamber door, and soon he is helping his drunken mother get back onto her feet. Later, the system asks if he will finally synchronize the die or back out like a coward. He could even surpass Tristan. Arthur holds the die, trying to resist its pull. Since logic cannot explain this, he thinks of Alina and declares he will use the die. That night, after using the dice for the first time, he grinds for more during the festival and over the long weekend. Our clever hero comments on how easy the quests are, like just clearing out the castle stables. And thanks to those tasks, he has become more handsome and clever, feeling like he is finally cheating at the game of destiny. Monday comes. You and I see Arthur walk to the academy, wondering what everyone will think. As he opens the doors, one of the Blackwood bullies immediately orders him to fetch a drink. But when Arthur turns around, the bully freezes. Everyone in the hall starts whispering, asking what happened, and if this handsome guy is really the useless peasant they knew. As Arthur walks to his bench, everyone notices he even looks taller. One of the thugs slaps his friend in pure shock. They know it is him, but they feel intimidated. The youngest Blackwood steps forward, asking if he is wearing boots with hidden insoles. The leader of the Blackwood gang also asks what kind of magic he used on his skin. When Arthur stays silent, they ask if he is scared. Looking down at them, he realizes they do not seem so threatening anymore. Noticing a faint bruise on his arm, he finds them ridiculous. The fear that once crushed him has completely vanished. As our hero clenches his fists, thinking about finally standing up to them, one of the thugs suddenly shouts in his face, and Arthur instantly feels that old terror rushing back. He realizes he only upgraded his looks and his build, and deeply regrets not putting at least some points into raw strength. He quickly grabs his bag and asks if they only want 3 ales, and our nervous hero runs off to fetch them. As he passes, everyone notices the massive change, and Arthur remembers how he was always just the errand boy at this academy. He runs along, thinking about which attribute to boost next. He hands the items over, mentioning he bought bread since the ale was short. The noble looks at him with pure disdain and grabs his collar, accusing him of doing this on purpose. Arthur notices the crowd murmuring, realizing that for the first time in his life, he is no longer invisible to them. The cruel thug snatches the bag and tosses it aside. He complains that Arthur fails at everything and shouts for a boy named 𝒐𝒔𝒆. Arthur panics. You and I will see what follows. Bridge 1, stick with me. We're seeing the modelless house declare that Brandon will handle all the errands since he's close to our protagonist. While the coward tries to flee and Dante is stripped of his rank, a noble approaches, stunned by our hero's sudden growth spurt. Others crowd around, marveling at his clear skin and regal look. Finally, he's getting the praise he always dreamed of having. For a moment he feels proud, finally getting the attention he's never received in his whole life. But his joy fades as the crowd's focus shifts. A noble lady claims she lost his contact scroll and begs for his address again. He can't wait for Isabella to finish her practice and see his transformation. When she enters the hall, Dante is overjoyed, but his heart sinks when he sees Lord Tristan trailing right behind her. Tristan glares, making it clear Dante isn't the only relic wielder anymore. Meanwhile, Evelyn is stunned by how much our hero has changed. She immediately rushes over, asking about his height and what he did over the festival weekend. He stammers, panicking, and blabs about visiting a holy cathedral before realizing how incredibly pathetic and stupid that sounds. Only the Saint of Mercy would find that charming. Evelyn just smiles, takes his hand, and offers her sincere congratulations. Dante turns crimson at her touch. He thinks all the suffering was worth it just to feel this one moment. He stammers out a thank you, but Tristan suddenly pulls her away. She snaps at him, embarrassed by the public display. Bridge 2, pay attention here. Tristan smugly announces they are finally in a relationship, leaving Dante frozen in shock as he is forced to offer his miserable congratulations. With his heart pounding and soul shattering, the other students tell them to stop the romance and find a private chamber instead. As Tristan laughs along with the crowd, Dante feels like a poisoned blade just pierced through his very chest. He feels like a fallen king, losing his golden crown. Like a crushing blow that sends his pride off a cliff. Dante thought he had finally reached the heavens, but his world just came crashing down. Sinking down. He hears the boys praising Tristan for his winning goal and calling him the luckiest man alive for winning Evelyn's heart. Tristan just plays it cool, teasing about a secret kiss before leaving the hall while everyone assumes he is just being very humble. Walking away, he shoots a smug look at Dante. That smirk sends our hero into a blind rage. Dante stands up and starts screaming for the Oracle's system to appear. The Oracle sighs, reminding him it has a name, and asks if he is actually trying to steal points from another relic wielder. The system calls it a bizarre request since relics are meant for self-improvement, not sabotaging others out of pure spite. Bridge 3, I know what you're thinking, and yeah, he's desperate enough to ask the system to turn back time and break them up just to ease his pain. Dante demands a new mission now. He needs more relics immediately. The Oracle says it is busy reading and tells him to go away. Our hero looks ready to have a full-blown rage attack. He realizes Tristan used the relics to become a perfect specimen. How could a guy like that win Evelyn? Back at the junior academy, she was the only one who ever bothered to speak to him. He blushed just hearing her voice. While getting beaten by common thugs, he watched her sing in the chapel, feeling like she was a star forever out of his reach. Dante thought the relics were his big chance, and now he regrets not finding them sooner so he could be the one beside her. Walking along, he spots the two of them together and unfortunately, they look like the perfect, happy couple he'll never be part of. Tristan pulls her close, making her blush furiously. Dante freezes, watching the exact moment he spent his whole life dreaming about, knowing it will never be his. And just like before, he ends up running away. Tristan did it to hurt him. As Dante flees, the image of them embracing burns into his mind, filling his soul with nothing but pure rage. Blighted by anger, he accidentally slams right into a young noblewoman. She apologizes quickly, checking if he's hurt, but Dante just grumbles that it wasn't her fault and keeps moving. Lost in his own despair, a student suddenly asks if he's the same Dante from her guild and why he's lurking around. He tries to remember her name, stumbling over his words as he claims he was just out for a bit of fresh air. She hides her forbidden smoking herbs, admitting she's doing the same. He falls back into a heavy, miserable silence. She notes that he looks much more impressive lately, not just his face, but he seems to have grown up quite a bit. Bridge 4, Dante feels flattered, but then his crystal glows with a new message, and trust me, you and I aren't ready for what's next. All right, you and I are about to see Alistair beg for power, until the voice grants him a few quests. The system offers the trials, Alistair accepts them eagerly, and the first tasks begin to arrive. Our fallen noble looks absolutely stunned after reading the requirements of the quest. The list is wild. Compliment a lady, date her, and touch her enchanted chest. He shakes with fear. He doesn't even know her name. Alistair protests these weird tasks, but the oracle promises a mountain of runes, far more than he has ever collected in his entire life. He wonders if he should just do it, since they will likely never cross paths again. Should he risk his honor for a touch? No, that is a crime against the crown and not worth the dungeon. He knows no rune is worth a life behind bars. However, looking at the rest, the other tasks seem doable. He approaches the lady, takes a deep breath, and finally calls her breathtaking. She freezes, herb pipe in hand. Turning to Alistair, she asks if she heard right while blushing a deep crimson. She tosses her pipe and flees toward the academy as the bells begin to chime. The knave feels guilty for the lie, but 5 runes are already in his pocket. The oracle asks if he is ready for the next trial. Alistair asks how he can possibly finish the next one. The oracle says it's quite simple. Just follow the instructions, the oracle adds, with a rather suspicious grin. Our hero wonders if this voice is actually a god, controlling both his new power and his strange, ultimate destiny now. He tries to find the reason behind it all, but the system reminds him who was the one begging for the runes. Still, the useless squire claims he has no idea how to pull this mission off. The harder the trial, the greater the reward. He wonders if Tristan completes quests like these, but the system acts silent. Back at the academy, the lowborns are causing trouble as Tristan watches Alistair with a cold and very serious gaze. Now watch this. Our hero and his rival finally face off on the academy's highest tower. Tristan asks what he wants. Our hero asks if he is truly courting the lady. Tristan scoffs, but Alistair asks if it's true love or just another quest he is completing. He argues that Alara is noble and beloved. There is no reason not to like her. Alistair accuses him of playing with her heart, but Tristan says it is none of his business. He shouts that she deserves the truth, but the handsome knight asks if Alistair has any right to speak since he is just a jealous peasant. He claims he will not lie for a quest, then immediately remembers his deception with the anonymous girl from earlier. Tristan smirks at his hypocrisy and tells him to shut his mouth and leave. He runs away, trying to convince himself that he is different and she's just being tricked. Suddenly, he stumbles into her, but when she asks for Tristan's location, he panics and bolts, promising to gather runes and become a better man, only to trip down the steep stone stairs. Someone asks if he is injured, but he remains focused on trying to greet the lady. At 8 of the clock, the academy is deserted, and Alistair sneaks past the night watchman. He climbs through a window and snatches a lady's tunic that he will have to clean. Nervously, he questions this task, The oracle says he accepted it only to surpass the heavens. He can't believe the quest requires him to take a girl's garment just to wash it clean. Next, he has to mark scrolls with a quill, labeling the forbidden and borrowed texts. He even goes as far as tearing out pages from a fellow student's alchemy grimoire. Stick with me here, because this is where the weakling finally starts turning into a real legend. He hurls a javelin across the field. The crowd is stunned and the maidens cheer. People wonder where this skill came from. With his prestige rising, no one dares to disrespect him anymore. He feels himself drifting further and further away from the weakling he used to be. But it burns him that those two never notice his new light, lost in their own romance. He wonders if they have shared a kiss, or if they are studying together in secret every night. So what do you and I take from this? Even with godlike power, he is still just a fool. All right, stick with me. You and I are about to see how much 𝒐𝒍𝒔 has changed since gaining his powers. They press Lady Guinevere for the truth, but a maid scoffs that she already has a suitor, while Guinevere stays silent. 𝒐𝒍𝒔 tries to pry into how many enchanted dice Tristan has hoarded, but the overseer claims that's confidential. So, 𝒐𝒍𝒔 asks about the leather-bound book he's holding instead. The system says it's an ancient text called the Holy Scripture, and 𝒐𝒍𝒔 ruins the ending by saying the Savior dies. The overseer gets irritated by this, but our knight just shrugs, reminding him that the hero comes back later anyway. 𝒐𝒍𝒔 spots poor Barnaby getting pummeled by those highborn thugs again. Seeing his friend's blood, he abandons his quest, remembering when he was the one being kicked while the world looked away. As they strike Barnaby, the lead bully demands he remove his spectacles, sneering that he hates feeling guilty when he breaks a commoner's face. 𝒐𝒍𝒔 roars at them to unhand his classmate. One of the thugs recognizes him as the former errand boy and laughs, thinking the peasant has finally lost his mind. But in a heartbeat, our clever knight lunges, throwing a heavy strike that sends the bully flying across the courtyard. Now pay attention, because the crowd is stunned. 𝒐𝒍𝒔 nurses his bruised knuckles, wishing he'd leveled up his constitution, before warning the rest to back off while their leader is still unconscious. One thug bellows a war cry and charges with a wild kick, but our hero sidesteps him with ease. To make up for his low constitution, he focused entirely on speed, landing a blow that drops the fool instantly. While Barnaby stares in shock, even 𝒐𝒍𝒔 is stunned by the raw power flowing through his veins now. With the bullies groveling in the dirt, 𝒐𝒍𝒔 retrieves his friend's spectacles and offers them back gently. The weeping page can't believe it. Trembling, he suddenly knocks his own glasses away in anger. Our hero says the system handled those brutes, but Barnaby spits back that he feels zero gratitude. He blames 𝒐𝒍𝒔 for everything, claiming the popular new knight couldn't possibly understand a peasant's struggle. The page says he tried his best to stay invisible to those noble monsters. 𝒐𝒍𝒔 is speechless, tears welling up, but Barnaby tells him to be quiet. There's a strict hierarchy in this academy. If Barnaby suffers, nobody cares. He tells 𝒐𝒍𝒔 he's no different from the bullies. Our hero finally realizes what Tristan meant in their last cryptic meeting. While the losers wail on the ground, the overseer asks if someone can please shut this kid up. Barnaby asks what he should do now. Our clever protagonist suddenly calls out his name. He remembers the page promised to give him a rare sketch of a famous bard. Barnaby just stands there, looking like he's completely lost in the moment. 𝒐𝒍𝒔 tosses a magical die his way. He catches it, staring deep into the glowing stone. You and I both know the overseer is fuming right now, asking why he'd do that. 𝒐𝒍𝒔 just grins and congratulates his friend. By twilight, our hero stands on the castle ramparts. As his cloak billows, he asks the overseer if he's reading again and if the page actually used the gift. Counting their new recruit, there are 3 known players in this kingdom. He wonders just how many more are hidden. But the overseer just gives him the same riddles he gives for every important question. 𝒐𝒍𝒔 snaps, asking if he's grumpy because he helped a friend. The overseer sighs, saying he's simply overwhelmed managing all the active players in the realm. No player wants their true nature exposed to the common folk, as it would cause total chaos. So, his lips remain sealed. He asks if Cedric is satisfied now, and why he'd risk giving a die to that boy. Our hero considers the question, but the truth is, he can't recall his reasoning. The overseer snidely suggests he should spend some points on his intelligence stat next. Our knight just chuckles at the insult. Gazing at the horizon, he says he just wanted to help because he knows the sting of being a lowly errand boy. The overseer warns that the page might blab, but Cedric knows that's impossible. Why would he ruin his only chance to finally have an edge? He tells the overseer he's being far too curious about one little stone. The system mutters that everything could have been handled better. Cedric doesn't quite get it, but he knows things are getting interesting. Back at the academy, the squires are all gossiping like usual. As Cedric passes, he hears the bullies grumbling that Barnaby is late. Arthur figures the kid stayed up late deciding which trait to magically enhance. He imagines the possibilities. Perhaps the boy became a handsome lord or a master duelist. When the great hall door creaks open, Cedric looks up, already sensing exactly who has finally arrived. The page who walks in looks exactly the same, still staring at his boots with that fearful expression. He wonders if Barnaby upgraded something else entirely. Watching him slouch like the same broken boy, Cedric sees the tragedy in his eyes and wonders if he even knew how to use the die. As he takes his seat, Cedric prepares to ask him, but sees the thugs cornering him again. "Trust me, you're going to want to see what happens next. You and I are about to see what happens when a bullied kid, finally, gets his hands on godlike power." Benjamin demands his notes back, but Silas throws the journal into the dirt, mocking his very low status. Silas stares at the poor boy's head, claiming he's found a gray hair that needs pulling. He brutally yanks the hair out, while the other students laugh. Benjamin begs him to stop, but Silas just keeps going. Dante watches the whole scene with pure disgust. Dante clenches his fists in a rage, as Silas prepares for another strike. Now watch this part carefully. It's the moment we've all been waiting for as Dante finally snaps, landing a devastating punch that shatters the bully's ribs. Silas is sent flying across the entire classroom. He smashes through chairs and slams into the stone wall, while everyone watches in dead silence. Benjamin stands up slowly, while Silas lies completely wrecked on the floor. Panic erupts as students start shouting to call for a healer. As everyone runs for help, Dante just stands there, watching Benjamin's chilling smile. Still smiling, Benjamin thanks Dante for giving him that power. Wait for it, Benjamin asks if this is what it feels like to finally be strong. Dante is frozen in disbelief, as Benjamin swears he will never obey another soul again. Anya looks on in terror, while the others scramble to help the broken bully. As Benjamin walks past, not a single person dares to move. Silas's friends help him up, screaming at Benjamin and asking if he's lost his mind. Hearing the word friend makes him stop dead in his tracks. He asks who among them actually treated him with any shred of dignity. He steps forward aggressively, while the other students tremble in fear. Suddenly, Dante appears in front of him, pleading with him to calm down. Benjamin respects his speed, but asks to be let through, thinking Dante would understand. Dante warns him that Silas is already finished, and that escalating this will only end badly. Benjamin clutches his head, asking if Dante is threatening him just because he's fast. He challenges Dante, wondering which would win in a fight, raw strength or pure speed. Dante keeps insisting that he doesn't want to fight his friend at all. Tristan interferes, telling them they've crossed a line. Benjamin just glares at him coldly. The three of them stand perfectly still, knowing the slightest move could start a war. Suddenly, the teacher arrives and rushes over to help the mangled boy on the floor. Benjamin's arm begins to pulse in agony, forcing him to flee from the room. Tristan stops Dante from following, demanding to know if he gave the boy the dice. While being interrogated, Dante hears the students calling for a medical carriage. Dante nervously insists that Benjamin isn't a bad person, just completely overwhelmed. He's still in total shock, thinking this isn't why he shared the dice. Tristan pressures him, asking if he's going to start giving out stolen power like charity. Dante yanks his hand away and tells Tristan to stop being so damn selfish. He runs through the halls until he finds Benjamin curled up in intense pain. Dante knocks on the door, saying he finally found him. Benjamin flinches, startled by the sound. He looks at Dante with desperate eyes, clutching his arm which looks completely mangled. Benjamin lowers his head, whispering that it's nothing to worry about. He laughs hysterically, wondering how Dante gained so much power in a single night. He tosses 6 magical dice onto the desk, boasting about his overnight haul. Trust me, you and I can see Dante's shock. 6 dice shouldn't grant that much power. All right, you and I are about to see what happens when a weakling discovers a god-tier cheat. Caleb laughs, mocking Arthur for knowing nothing about these runestones and keeping them for show. I mean, who believes in actual magical relics these days? But the second he cast the stone, the truth hit him like a lightning bolt. He keeps asking himself, what exactly is this stone? The mystery of it is honestly driving him insane. With power like this, they could rewrite the very laws of nature and what it means to be human. He is desperate to prove this power through arcane theory. That is why he has been running trials, experimenting, and recording every bit of data on these strange relics. The Arbiter interjects, explaining that in theory, you can use them to boost any attribute you desire. You could literally transcend the physical limits of the entire human race if you have the guts. Boost your endurance enough and you could deflect arrows. With no limits, how high could you jump with your bare hands? Could you stop a charging warhorse? Watch closely. Caleb is obsessed, constantly questioning where the true limits actually end. Caleb looks completely possessed as he speaks, explaining that physical strength was the simplest trait to test for his research. So, he used an enchanted measuring device to gather the raw data for his experiments. He stumbled onto something wild. The more you focus on a single skill, the more explosive the transformation becomes. Instead of spreading the magic across your entire body, focusing it solely on your palm creates a massive, explosive surge in raw physical power. Think of it as focused amplification on one limb. That is why his right arm looks perfectly normal compared to his left. But the second he leans on the heavy oak table, he pulverizes the wood instantly, proving his left arm is on a god-tier level of raw strength. He picks up a jagged shard of the broken timber and simply turns it to dust in his grip. Arthur watches in shock, asking if that kind of raw pressure would eventually tear his body apart. Caleb admits it is unstable, but it is like a well of infinite energy making him invincible. Arthur asks what would happen if he increased that specific skill even more. Caleb's eyes light up, saying that just thinking about the possibilities is giving him 100 new ideas. I know what you're thinking. Is he going too far? Arthur stays quiet, feeling uneasy about everything. If he can shatter human limits, he might reach something that no one has ever dreamed of, like moving objects with his mind. Our hero is stunned that Caleb is even bringing up forbidden sorcery like that, asking him directly if Caleb can actually perform those feats yet. Unfortunately, the answer is a flat no. He explains that he can't yet, but he's getting there. He actually tried using a relic to unlock those mental powers earlier. When the Arbiter asked which trait he wanted to level up, the clever guy asked for the power to see through walls, for profit, obviously. But the moment he tried to enhance that specific ability, something went wrong. A massive error occurred. What the Arbiter told him was a total shock. He pulls out an enchanted slate, revealing that the specific skill he wanted hasn't even been unlocked in the skill tree yet. Arthur's eyes go wide. He cannot believe what he is seeing on that glowing message. Caleb is just thrilled it is not impossible, just locked for now. It is like a child who suddenly learns how to sprint. Or someone who has never touched a horse suddenly becoming a master rider. These relics make the impossible possible. It is all about uncovering the hidden secrets to make the stones grant them those high-level psychic powers. As they reach the square, they see a healer's carriage with its sirens blaring. Arthur peers through a cracked window, and Caleb suddenly asks him what kind of royal missions he has finished so far. Our hero feels a bit awkward. Thinking back on his messy tasks, he just says they were pretty standard missions. Caleb asks if they involved alchemy or cracking ancient codes, but Arthur admits he has never done anything that complex. Just as he is piecing it together, a young lady rushes in to tell the instructor they are all waiting in the hall. Caleb explains that missions vary for every person, just like how different noble houses start in different parts of the kingdom. It all unfolds according to the arbiter's will. Arthur turns back when he hears him mention overcoming this massive obstacle. He makes a quick exit as soon as he sees the rest of the students flooding into the lecture hall. Outside the academy walls, Arthur walks under a golden sky, wondering how life got this complicated just by trying to help a friend. He clearly remembers the look of pure gratitude on Caleb's face when he first handed him that relic. Now, he is not sure if he actually helped him at all, wondering what Caleb is really going through after everything. He realizes his friend was banished from the academy because the elders simply could not ignore so many witnesses. He makes a grimace as he pulls out his enchanted slate to send a quick message. He tells his friend not to be reckless. I mean, you and I both know this is far from over. All right, you and I are about to see a noble household fall into absolute madness over one boy's massive mistake. The Lord claims this 3-day disgrace will ruin his legacy, while the parents start tearing each other apart over his upbringing. China shatters on the floor as the lady screams that her husband values gold more than his own flesh and blood. Alistair listens from his chamber, bored out of his mind, thinking everyone is just obsessed with playing their scripted, normal parts. Suddenly, he begins writing with intense, unwavering focus. He muses that with the enchanted die, he could rule this kingdom instead of rotting in this tedious, ordinary life. Night settles on the grand tower. Alistair paces restlessly, frustrated that Arthur is ignoring him, wondering if the scholar is actually attempting to unlock magic. In a vision, a herald summons a guest to the grand stage. The crowd roars, eager to witness someone demonstrate the legendary gift of foresight. Arthur appears in robes, levitating before the stunned nobles. During the spectacle, the herald asks the next challenger to step forward and introduce themselves. Alistair steps out, claiming he can command the very air itself, as the crowd demands a display of his magic. With a cynical smirk, he makes a heavy relic float effortlessly. Back in the present, he laughs at those useless tricks. What the die truly enhances is far more powerful. A message arrives. He hopes it is Arthur, but it is Xenia, the oracle, chirping in his ear. He calls her an annoying spirit. Xenia asks why he is moping when so many noble ladies have been flooding his inbox with letters. She starts reciting their scandalous confessions, making Alistair snap at her to stop reading his private correspondence. Then she mentions Lady Alina. Alistair goes quiet, knowing she is not the type to send desperate pleas. Pay attention here, Alistair questions if Arthur can truly survive the die's dangerous curse, but Xenia claims she is merely a silent observer. She explains that as long as the divine laws are kept, everything will be fine, for just as some hunt for beauty, others bleed for power. The oracle's purpose is simple: to watch the players and witness their grand ambitions and inevitable fates. Alistair wonders what the golden knight Tristan wished for. Meanwhile, Arthur is buried deep in his ancient scrolls. He is jolted awake by heavy footsteps. A visitor has arrived. His mother announces that a peer from the academy is waiting. Curious, he goes to meet them under the moonlight, only to find Tristan standing in the courtyard. Arthur descends the stairs and freezes, fists tight as he spots his rival. He demands to know what business brings him here. The knight tells him not to fear his presence. He explains that public scenes serve no one and draws too much unwanted attention, asking instead to speak in a place where no prying eyes can witness them. You and I are going back 1 year, into the freezing storm where a broken boy weeps, wishing he had never been born so wretched and hideous. But some cruel fates decided at birth can never be truly altered by mere men. Reaching the summit of the tower, he steps out into the freezing downpour. He climbs over the stone ledge, his trembling hands gripped by sheer agony. Staring into the abyss, he remembers how the academy treated him like filth, as if he lacked a soul. Lost in the darkness, he wonders if the fall will finally bring him freedom and happiness. Just as his feet touch the edge, something heavy suddenly drops. Suddenly, a large fruit crashes onto the stone, shattering into a million pieces. Struggling for air, the boy imagines his own body breaking like that fruit, finally finding the freedom of the grave. He knows not a single noble at school would shed a tear for his passing. But wait, why should he die for them? Hesitating, he wonders what other path is left to take. Footsteps echo behind him in the dark. A voice asks him to surrender his life since he is already throwing it away. He turns to see the stranger, but his foot slips, leaving him dangling over the edge of certain death. The figure catches his wrist in a crushing iron grip, but instead of climbing up, the boy fights back, desperately trying to let himself fall. His boot falls away into the darkness. He stares down at the terrifying distance to the hard ground. Tears flood his eyes as the instinct to survive finally wins, and he begs for mercy. The hooded stranger whispers that today, his former self has perished. The boy weeps, his eyes flooding with terror, but the man hauls him back up, declaring that he has been reborn this night. He lies there, soul still trembling. The man simply says, "Happy birthday." And that is where we leave it, the moment one glowing die changed everything forever. Trust me, you and I are going to want to see what happens next. All right, you and I are about to witness the moment a legend begins. The scholar asks about this place and why they had to silence their crystals just to talk. Tristan stays strangely silent while observing the area, saying this spot is perfect for a watch. Now with the scrying crystals dark, the architect cannot see or hear them, and Tristan says he is just checking. Cedric is annoyed he was called out here for this, but he wants to test Tristan too. The scholar lunges and throws a powerful punch, but Tristan dodges as the massive stone wall behind him shatters. Tristan's cheek is grazed as the scholar's fist destroys everything, but the knight keeps on dodging every strike. Looking ahead, Tristan finds an opening and lands a solid kick, sending Cedric flying and breaking his arm. The scholar realizes Tristan is also an ancient rune player. Our genius understands now. Arthur's transformation and Tristan's arrival prove he gave the ancient runes to our young protagonist at the academy. Clenching his fists, he wonders how much his magic has grown. Preparing another punch, he must test his true strength. Tristan smirks, thinking he's mad. The scholar shouts, asking if Tristan possesses some supernatural and godlike abilities. Tristan looks confused by the question. Cedric explains the architect said powers unlock at higher tiers, so Tristan must surely have them by now. Tristan tells him to stop reading myths, because such a thing is impossible today. Even if such magic existed, he would have no reason to use it at all. He notes Cedric's ruined arm and dares him to try using his magic during their duel to see what happens next in this fight. Tristan calmly watches as Cedric leaps into the air to strike him down with one punch. A thunderous explosion echoes loudly now. At the estate, Arthur is deep in thought about the runes. He decides to research them in the ancient library tonight. He finds scrolls and how these dice were once used in many old games. He discovers an old legend where high rolls brought fortune, while low rolls brought a life of total misery and pain. From kings to peasants, Arthur realizes that people from the past are just like those we see today. Arthur remembers his dream and his talk with the architect, who isn't a god, but has certainly surpassed all humanity. You and I saw that coming, right? The battlefield is now completely destroyed. Cedric pulls his hand from the rubble, mocking Tristan for dodging, but the knight is now staggering before his eyes. Enraged, he prepares another punch, but Tristan effortlessly stops the strike with just one hand. Tristan shoves him aside, leaving him wide open for a massive and crushing kick. Strangely, We see Arthur discovering more about the different rune types. Rolling runes is just like flipping a coin. Cedric hits the ground now, severely injured after the fight. A gold coin falls and spins, something that might be important very soon. Tristan approaches and asks if he's done. Cedric tells him to shut up, ready to fight. But his arm has reached its limit, causing him intense and burning pain. Tristan warns him, if he keeps rolling, he will rip his hands off so he can never roll the ancient runes ever again in this life. Tristan walks away, telling the scholar to stop. Cedric asks if he knows anything about the architect or if they have met before this night. The knight says he knows nothing. Pay attention here. Cedric knows a secret about the system that no one else does. Arthur notices days passing without word from his lady, only from people who do not matter to him at all in this kingdom. The academy feels more peaceful, though 2 empty chairs remain ignored by everyone in the hall during the trials of the royal crown today, leaving Arthur quite suspicious. Arthur watches the happy couples when someone steps forward and suddenly calls his name. It was Lady Seraphina, asking what he was doing. She invites him for tea, asking how Arthur is doing with his trials and his studies for the upcoming exam. He lies, as he is actually using the runes to boost his intelligence for the upcoming trials. On a pleasant day, he finally orders a feast. And that is where we leave it. Our hero finally eats for himself, not for others in the palace or the kingdom. All right, stick with me because this fantasy thriller is about to take a dark turn. Arthur excuses himself and runs after his friend, stopping to remind Barnaby that he's still banned from the Royal Academy grounds. His friend seems completely off, so he assures him that he only came over to talk things through. Barnaby asks which attributes he's boosted with the runes lately, and Arthur admits he focused on wisdom for the upcoming trials. Then he asks if Barnaby is feeling the heat, wearing those heavy clothes. But the scholar simply claims he's learned something about the Archon. Arthur is fascinated, but then their other classmates arrive. He tries to get Barnaby alone, but with everyone there, his friend says he'll have to tell him everything later. The rebellious lady mocks him for being near the academy while exiled, but Arthur just says he's visiting and bids Barnaby farewell until tomorrow. Left alone, Barnaby looks twisted, hiding his arm and hand under some very strange, heavy bandages. He pulls out his enchanted slate and sees a new command. He smiles upon reading that he has a dangerous mission. His new objective is to set fire to the academy. Time passes and it gets dark. Students whisper in fear as they leave the grounds late, terrified of rumors about ghosts. In the shadows, someone is hiding. One of the girls senses something and feels scared. Someone is definitely hiding in the plants. Now here's the part you need to watch closely. Barnaby is ready with a canister of oil, while Arthur feels a sense of dread. He quickly gets up from his bed and grabs his slate, asking about the time he gave the rune to Barnaby. The Archon had supported the idea, but suddenly the screen glitches and his messages just start disappearing. Out of nowhere, his friend knocks on the chamber door and steps inside. Arthur demands to know what he's doing there so late, but Barnaby only mutters about his left arm. It's literally falling apart. Arthur gasps awake from the nightmare, feeling restless. He just wants to get some fresh air. He grabs his slate and sees a message from Barnaby, saying he has a lot to share tomorrow. Arthur just stares at the glowing text, realizing there's nothing to do but wait for morning. Barnaby climbs the stairs, thinking about how the world is a machine that never stops. Study, go to college, make money. Boring. The runes were his escape from that machine. As he pushed into his research, he found some important secrets. With the oil canister in hand, he keeps his eyes on the slate. And when the clock strikes exactly 12, the academy bells ring out. His first mission is finally complete. After collecting his runes, he's immediately ready for the next objective. Barnaby begins pouring oil around the school. He decides to enter a classroom and finish there to make it look like an accident, exactly as instructed. But suddenly, a magic alarm blares through the academy. Barnaby panics, having no idea this system even existed. As he stumbles over a bench, the oil spills everywhere. And just like that, he completes another dark mission. Trembling and drenched in sweat, he claims his massive reward of 7 runes. You saw that too, right? He's terrified of the guards, but he grabs the flint and steel to finish the job. As he strikes, he burns himself from the heat and drops it. Barnaby claims he did everything, even though he never lit the fire. The Archon comments that it looked pretty fake when he dropped the lighter. The sentries rush toward the room. Barnaby screams, demanding that the system give him the runes immediately. The Archon calls him terrifying and agrees to hand over the reward. A glow appears and he wastes no time grabbing the runes. He hoods his face and sprints out, but the guards spot him. They shine their lanterns on him. He immediately bolts away, determined not to be caught. A sentry appears at the stairs, blocking him. He asks who is there, but our scholar is completely frozen in shock. He's trapped in a nightmare situation. With a broken arm and no time to use his runes, he realizes he has to hide somehow. Suddenly, the guards lose their target and can't tell where the intruder went. But one guard eyes a bathroom window suspiciously. He approaches slowly with his lantern raised high, looking in all directions. But when he reaches the window, he just starts smoking his pipe. Barnaby is hanging from a pipe outside, but the metal looks unstable and the guard won't leave the ledge. However, his colleagues say the intruder must have escaped. The man leaves the window and joins his friends. Talk about a close call. You and I both know this isn't over yet. Stick with me, we're entering a tale where every choice has a price. Distract the guards on the 5th level. Dante wonders why he's doing this, having no idea the mission was meant to save his closest friend. As he leaves his mother's cottage, he can't shake the feeling that his nightmare and this task are connected. Surprisingly, Dante rejects the mission. Then, he sees Lady Alara walking down the castle road. Our hero approaches her immediately, and she's shocked to see him so early. She assumes he's simply working hard. Alara simply explains she's heading to the cathedral choir. They discuss the upcoming hymnal competition, a topic Tristan mentioned that seems to light up her entire face. Strangely, the castle gates are unguarded. Usually, knights are everywhere. Both of them realize something is terribly wrong at the academy. Students are huddling in the courtyard as the masters order everyone to stay back. A healer's carriage is parked outside. The whispers are terrifying. Someone fell from the high tower during the night. Pay attention here. This is where Dante's world shatters. He tells Alara to stay back and charges into the crowd. After fighting through the frantic students, he reaches the center and freezes in horror. The sight leaves him paralyzed. Alara catches up, breathlessly asking what everyone is looking at. He spins around instantly, shielding her eyes from the gruesome scene. She asks why he's shielding her vision, but Dante insists he will explain later. For now, don't look. There lies his fallen friend, Julian, broken on the cold ground. They say he jumped, but that tower is locked tight. Looking at the body, Dante finally realizes his mission was meant to save Julian. We see a flashback of Julian desperately climbing the tower walls. With one lucky leap, he catches the window ledge. But his arm is mangled, and with the oracle stone weighing him down, he finds no escape. The poor soul falls. As healers shroud the body, Dante sends Alara away. He begins walking alone, demanding X explain why his friend is dead. The voice mocks him sarcastically, claiming Julian's death is Dante's own fault for rejecting the mission. Our hero is absolutely consumed with rage. He remembers Julian wanted to talk, likely about a dark secret involving the system. Suddenly, a young noblewoman passes by, clutching a glowing oracle stone. Dante demands to know where she found it, but she reveals that many others have found them too. The stones are everywhere. Dante tries to snatch one from a boy's hand, but it spins, and he receives a mysterious message. Julian's hidden stones had scattered across the courtyard when he fell from the tower. Now, there's no stopping the students from scavenging. Dante begs X to stop this magical chaos. X refuses. Since Dante shared his stones before out of kindness, the system won't stop the spread. I know what you're thinking. A world full of power sounds great, right? Well, think again. X claims this is charity. The voice sarcastically mocks him, claiming it's only helping a few people. It didn't come to this kingdom to bring peace. Students are becoming players. X sneers, I only brought the blade. You choose how to swing it. Dante and Tristan both realize that the kingdom they once knew is about to change forever. Days pass. The Grand Master calls for silence to announce exam rankings. The first-place student earns a perfect score. Everyone applauds loudly. Everyone scored perfectly. The master tosses the scrolls into the air in celebration. They all thank Dante, praising him as their savior. Classmates surround him. Their gratitude feels more like a suffocating trap. Julian suddenly appears behind him, whispering that he's a true friend. Then, Dante bolts upright from another haunting nightmare. He runs his hand through his hair, feeling relieved it was only a nightmare. A message arrives. The funeral is today. He just wants to wake up from this terrible, endless nightmare. The burial happens a week later. Rumors say Julian planned to burn the academy, but Dante knows his friend wasn't a monster. Julian was far too clever to die like that. So what do you and I take from this? Sometimes the game is rigged from the start. Anyway, with his comrades gathered at the wake. Stick with me. We are about to see if Arthur can stop a fate that is spiraling out of control. He has been secretly hoarding those stones of fate, keeping Alina in the dark about his growing power. The village elders lead the service, whispering about what could have driven a young squire to such a dark end. A fellow student mentions similar tragedies at other knightly academies, but tells Arthur his high honors protect him. Lost in thought, Arthur accidentally knocks into a stranger and quickly bows before they vanish into the crowd. The lad with the long fringe just smirked at our hero and kept walking. The others wonder who would be that arrogant, while Arthur just watches the stranger in tense silence. The others think he is just looking for a brawl, but pay attention. Arthur knows he is another relicuser and immediately bolts off. But in the middle of the bustling city square, he loses sight of him completely. Moving through so many people makes it impossible to find him. Back at the academy, things seem deceptively peaceful. But not for Arthur, who has lost a friend. Everyone else seems fine, with squires sparring and others heading to the tavern. Rumors of new noble matches spread like wildfire, while on the training field, a brutal point is fiercely scored. Students gasp at the scorer's unnatural strength, but Arthur barely notices. Shortly after that, he passes by some scholars asking a boy about his sudden loss of weight, making him speculate that this was the power of the relics in action. He keeps walking until he finds two figures in a chamber. Arthur is intrigued by these two familiar faces. The young lady looks visibly uncomfortable. He recognizes his crush, Alina. You and I saw that look too. She is arguing with her suitor and storms out. Arthur tries to play it cool by accidentally crossing her path, but when their eyes meet, his heart nearly stops. He fumbles over his words, swearing it was just a coincidence and that it was not intentional. Alina watches the stuttering young man with a faint blush on her face before putting on a small smile. The girl asks if he is free, leaving the young man baffled with red cheeks. Meanwhile, an orb strikes a passing student. This person looks at the heavy ball as it lands on the ground. The striker politely apologizes and asks him to throw the ball back, telling him to kick it with all his might. So the young man decides to shoot just as he was told, launching the orb with terrifying velocity that grazes the player's hair. The ball even manages to bend the iron bar of the goal before exploding on impact in front of the stunned players, to the point where one squire is unable to stand after witnessing such a feat. The mysterious student watches as the others are baffled and amazed, drawing a small, satisfied smile on his face. A boy and girl were walking at sunset. Alina offered to help with the crate Arthur was carrying, but he refused. Arthur, happy despite this not being a date, stated that as a man, he should not let her help him. Alina was tasked by the headmaster to deliver their late classmate's final effects to his family estate. Since her partner was busy, she asked Arthur to join her. Soon, they arrive at the home of the deceased Cedric. With that, they finally arrive at the 11th floor. As an uncomfortable silence settles between her and the blushing Arthur, they stand before the door and ring the bell repeatedly, yet there is no answer. Arthur realizes no one is home, when suddenly a door creaks open and someone comes out curious about the young ones. Meanwhile, back at the academy, everyone is still baffled by that shot that warped a solid metal bar. The smug shooter smirks and begins to walk away, when suddenly one of the players stops him and complains about the ball. The others tell their friend to knock it off, but he keeps going. But it seems like the mysterious person cannot hear him, until the miracle shooter suddenly turns around. He asks the player what he should do about a popped ball, as the knight demands a replacement or a formal apology. The mysterious person then decides to provoke the young man, asking what would happen if he did neither. This triggers the player, who immediately attacks, but the miracle shooter counters with one of his powerful kicks. Meanwhile, at the late student's estate, which had become unattended, our hero decided to take a look around from the corner of his eye. Cedric's mother is grateful for the visit. "Trust me, you and I know something is up," when she mentions another handsome stranger. "All right, stick with me. We are diving into a story where Alaric realizes the boy they lost was Thomas, while Lady Alina praises her son. The grieving mother could not accept that her son was gone so soon, blaming her own noble upbringing for his tragic fate. But our hero cut her off, firmly declaring that his comrade was never the type of man to simply surrender his own life. He argued there had to be a darker reason for this sudden departure, though the right words to explain it escaped him. As memories of his friend flooded back, Alaric realized how empty the phrase "if only" truly was, still wondering what would have changed if he had accepted those strange trials back at the academy. He might have saved his brother in arms from that fatal plunge. Alaric did not even dare to imagine any other possible ending. He stood there in a heavy silence, suddenly trembling with a rage that the observant mother did not fail to notice. Seeing that her son was held in such high regard by his friend finally brought her a small spark of peace. She begged him never to forget her beloved boy, a promise Alaric accepted, before she insisted the young squire stay for a meal. Alice tried to politely decline, but the woman realized she forgot her supplies and rushed out to the local market. She asked them to guard the manor before they could utter a word. Now, our hero was finally alone with his lady, asking if she was all right. The young girl looked baffled. Alaric asked why Alice was staring so intently, and she whispered that he seemed different, making him wonder if it was his new physique or face. She agreed those changes were clear, but she felt as if his very soul had shifted, though she could not quite name it. Alaric gazed at her as she gave him a soft smile, and completely overwhelmed by the intensity of the moment. He began to stammer, using the washroom as a desperate excuse to escape. As he fled, his face turned a bright, burning red. Now watch this. Alaric reaches a heavy oak door, and assuming it is the washroom, he pushes it open. Meanwhile, back at the Royal Academy, a mysterious knight strikes a fellow student. The blow landed with blinding speed, yet to the attacker's shock, the young student managed to block that devastating iron-shattering kick. The miraculous striker pulled back, intrigued that this mere boy could withstand such a powerful assault without taking a single scratch. In that moment, he realized the student was a crest-bearer who had pushed his physical endurance to the absolute limit. Across the kingdom, the door slowly creaked open, revealing a private study with old parchments scattered across a desk. The hero realized this was the sanctuary of his fallen friend. Slowly, he stepped into the late squire's private chambers. Alaric saw that the mother kept the room exactly as it was. He wondered what secrets Thomas had uncovered about the ancient sacred crests. He approached the journals on the desk, but was suddenly startled by Alice calling his name, causing the pile to crash down. One book fell open, revealing a drawing of a crest and an incantation that immediately caught the young man's attention. Curious, Alaric lifted the leather notebook. The pages were filled with detailed lore about the crests and those who bore them, gripping his focus. Slowly, he began to turn pages. You and I are seeing the truth here. The notes mention the sovereign and the ranks of power that can only be climbed by mastering magic arts. The late student ranked Thomas as an A-tier knight, while Alaric was labeled as a B rank or even lower. The squire had even wondered about the limits of these arts, attempting to infiltrate the royal ledger for answers, leaving Alaric standing there in shock. Alaric frantically searched the journal for more answers, but the entries that followed began to speak of a different omen. The late bearer wondered what would happen if the entire kingdom gained this power, though it seemed unlikely such a spread could occur. Thomas seemed truly obsessed with the idea of more crest bearers appearing. Using the sacred crests meant staying hidden from high society and guarding the secret with one's own life. More bearers would surely surface, and then the inevitable wars for power would begin. The knight snarled that the mysterious boy lacked enough crests, while the other students moved to break up the duel. One of them shouted that the training ball was no longer of any importance. Suddenly, the mysterious student's kick shattered someone's arm, while Alaric wondered if this power would forever divide their world into two. If the number of users continued to grow and more were chosen, then the world would eventually be ruled by crests. Just like that broken limb, such tragedies were bound to repeat. The boy who tried to stop the duel was now collapsed on the stone. He writhed in agony from his shattered bone, leaving the two powerful fighters standing there in a stunned, breathless silence. As everyone rushed in, trust me, you and I have only seen the start. All right, you and I are about to see this fight take a dark, unexpected turn as a phone suddenly vibrates with new quests. The first quest is to keep fighting until the very end, while the others demand hurting innocent students and causing grave injuries to them. The mysterious stranger is completely baffled by the outrageous demands he just received on his device. But then Arthur's phone vibrates too. It turns out both seekers received the exact same twisted missions. They are revolted by such scandalous demands. But then the player starts counting the innocent bystanders nearby. This really intrigues the mysterious student. Arthur reveals he is wondering if the quest is actually doable, leaving the other guy in a state of pure stress. Later that night, Arthur and Alara head home while the dark streets are lit by the warm glow of lanterns. Alara thanks our hero for his help, but Arthur brushes it off, noting her mother seems completely exhausted lately. Suddenly, a carriage speeds by, forcing the blushing protagonist to pull the girl close to safety. Arthur then asks Alara what she thinks about a world filled with fictional superpowers. The girl doesn't believe those kinds of abilities would be very useful. He asks what if people could change their looks and strength at will. Alara thinks it over for a long moment. She believes people should live with what they are given, unlike how she felt when she was younger. She wants to work hard using her own natural qualities. Alara is curious about the question, so Arthur just claims he is asking to kill some time. Still, she admits how wonderful it would be to use magic to gain more practice time, leading our young hero to ask for permission to watch her upcoming competition. Now watch closely, because Arthur is about to get hit with some cold reality. Alara politely declines, stating she is going out with her boyfriend instead. An awkward silence settles between them. Alara then insists on walking alone. Arthur insists on staying, but she warns that such kindness gives people the wrong idea, leaving him totally speechless. They part ways as Arthur watches her disappear into the distance, thinking deeply about her views on the world. That night, the sky is bright and beautifully decorated with shimmering stars. With a notebook in hand, our hero admires the view, as this way of life is also challenging for him. Later that night, Arthur texts his crush to make sure she returned home safely. The protagonist is totally unsure about the words he used in the text. After some thought, he finds the right sentence and sends it. Arthur is thrilled when she responds almost immediately. Our blushing hero tells her he will see her tomorrow at the academy. Her goodnight wish fills him with excitement, until he gets a message from a completely different person. Julian knows Arthur is disappointed it's him, and starts teasing him about the girl, making him blush with embarrassment. Arthur decides to ask the architect a question that piques his curiosity. He hesitates at first, but then admits he has read through his late friend's private notebook. He recalls the architect saying he only has issues with seekers who break the rules, which is then confirmed. This is why our hero links his friend's death to breaking the rules by hacking the magical game. The architect states that any troublemaker in his game must be immediately removed. Think about that for a second. Arthur's friend actually managed to break the magical system. Arthur recalled how Caleb claimed there was much more to the stones than anyone knew, and he found a very strange note at the end of the notebook that left him completely confused. To finally meet the architect, our hero will have to become the top seeker of all. This makes him think. He remembers Alara's words about people living with what they have. Yet, without the stones, Alara never would have noticed his changes or even bothered to talk to him. Arthur really wants to understand Caleb's final message to him. The notebook mentioned that perfected stones allow a user to go beyond all human limits. That was it. The next day at school, the students are all discussing the brutal fight from yesterday. Witnesses claim students were badly hurt and even injured while trying to stop the fight between the two sides. Others notice that some classmates are missing today, but a witness mentions seeing something very odd, catching the protagonist's curiosity from afar. He recalls how many were hurt during the brawl, when suddenly something shiny appeared on the ground. And that's where we leave it. Trust me, things are about to get even crazier. All right, you and I are about to witness how a simple dice threw this entire academy and the kingdom into absolute chaos. Tobias was eavesdropping from the shadows when something caught his eye. Suddenly, the academy door flew wide open. A squire rushed in, shouting that something massive was happening in the halls. This piqued everyone's interest, as the boy claimed the ladies in the next ward had suddenly become enchantingly beautiful. The news spread like wildfire, and soon, every student was racing to see the miracle with their own eyes. Some whispered it was forbidden alchemy, while others joked it was a magical plague, changing their very faces before them. One girl soaked up the attention, but as the crowd gathered, a student asked our hero if he was coming along. Arthur declined, realizing how fast the number of dicers was growing. The academy grounds were turning into a hunting field for quests, while one student was just trying to rest. Another suddenly struck him from behind. A bizarre act, but he was simply finishing his mandated quest. Nearby, a girl scribbled on her magic scroll, sending fake pleas for help. She urged people to download a scrying link called The Righteous. When questioned, she stayed silent. She needed 50 followers for her quest, and nothing else mattered to her right now. On the other hand, now pay attention here, things get dark fast. Friends were being locked in dungeons just to satisfy these twisted quests. At twilight, a herald announced the start of a penalty game between the rival students. As the decree echoed, a young boy hurried through the stone corridors, clutching a heavy satchel in his hands. He reached the hidden chamber, but a guard stepped out to block his path. The guard demanded his business, making the boy stammer. He heard of a master dealing in dice, so the guard snatched his bag. Precious jewels and bags of gold spilled across the cold, hard floor. The guard cuffed the boy, realizing he had stolen from his sister, but someone inside showed mercy, granting him entry to the classroom. The mysterious leader asked why he had come to find him. The boy pleaded to become a dicer, just like all the other squires in his ward. But no one would grant him a die. The master only giggled at his request. Suddenly, the player who held the dice welcomed the trembling boy into his inner family. The word family sent a shiver down his spine as they all loomed over him. In an instant, his bag was ripped away. Inside were gold coins, a portable game device, checks, and counterfeit watches. They even found a signet ring and a silver necklace. The boss ordered his men to bag it all up. I know what you are thinking. Is it worth it? The boy nervously asked for his dice, claiming he was from the 5th ward. The boss leaned in, asking if every squire in his ward was truly a dicer. Suddenly, the boss lunged forward, grabbing the boy's collar. He knew he was looking at a dirty liar. The family knew only a few in the Fifth Ward held dice. The boy just wanted his power before anyone else. The boss let him go and tossed him a single die, asking what he would wish to change first. The boy wanted to be handsome, tired of the cruel jokes. Grinning, the boss handed over a glowing red die. But the boy froze. He knew a red die was useless to someone like him. He demanded a blue one. The boss explained the red die was a test. Give a man a blue die, and he might betray the family immediately. To earn the blue, he had to prove his worth, which absolutely terrified the young squire. As he signed the oath, the boss asked about his sister. If she was beautiful, he was told to bring her here. He had to do this, or find another treasure to pass the trial. With that, he fled the room. Another dicer asked the boss what his real end game was with all of this. He laughed, saying pawns were useful for the X quests. The more souls he controlled, the higher his winning odds. He mocked the boy's goals, wondering if he could satisfy the hungry masses. The next morning, the sun rose high. Dante gripped his magic mirror in frustration. He had no idea how to climb the ranks of this world. He needed more dice. Fast. The quests were changing now that so many people were playing this dangerous game. Dante managed to snatch a few dice with his speed, but stick with me, because that scream we just heard. Pure trouble. Trust me, we're about to see how 3 girls suddenly became beautiful. Arthur noticed quests were finishing fast when a new challenge popped up. He was certain he'd be able to reach the high tower before any other dicer. Meanwhile, a lone boy felt uneasy, haunted by failures that kept him from a power-up. He wondered when he would truly become a legendary dicer. He expected to rank up early, but now he had to bring a beautiful girl to his mysterious order. He accidentally knocked into a girl carrying books and immediately apologized. He rushed to help her up and check her condition. Lady Alara confirmed she was fine. She was just trying to get those books to the Hall of Echoes before the others arrived. Hearing this, the boy decided he had to help her. She tried to decline, but he snatched the pile from her, stating that a man should carry them. They headed to the hall together with Alara, who was growing visibly tense. Someone was sprinting. Footsteps echoed until they finally reached the very top of the stairs. Arthur burst through the door, hoping to be first. But Tristan was already there, holding the glowing dice in his hand. Our hero felt crushed while Tristan just smirked with pride. The 2 rivals stood in silence until Tristan finally declared that he had something to say. Meanwhile, Alara and the boy arrived at the Hall of Echoes. The girl was truly thankful for his help. But pay attention here, just as she's about to speak, the mood shifts completely and everything goes wrong. He locked the door, leaving her intrigued and uneasy. The boy then revealed that he found her absolutely breathtaking. Alara was confused as the boy started stuttering. Then, he asked her if she was a secret dicer too. Tristan had more to say, but Arthur didn't care. He congratulated him on the win and turned to leave the tower. But Tristan wasn't finished. Tristan stopped him, warning that war was coming between the new dicer factions. He needed Arthur's help to secure the dice and keep things under control. Tristan argued that since Arthur started all this, he was the one who had to help fix it. Arthur disagreed. He believed the dice had actually made people's lives better, giving them a real chance. He told Tristan to be happy with his own transformation. Suddenly, Arthur felt a presence charging at him with insane speed. Instinct kicked in, allowing Arthur to barely dodge Tristan's sudden and lethal surprise punch. Confused, Arthur demanded an answer. Tristan just snarled, claiming Arthur was too dense to understand the situation as he launched a heavy kick. Arthur evaded again, while Tristan screamed that he couldn't let his whole life be ruined because of Arthur's mistakes. Our hero managed to block the next strike, pushing back to gain some much-needed breathing room. Tristan stopped and asked a pointed question. Was Arthur still in love with Alara? You and I know that silence was the only answer Tristan needed. He explained that Alara still knew nothing of dicers. If this spread, she'd find out Arthur's secret, and he asked if Arthur cared. Meanwhile, back in the hall, 𝒉 was intrigued by the word dicer. The boy explained they were people using magical dice to boost their strength and mind far beyond human limits. 𝒉 swore she didn't know anything about it, but he didn't believe her since it was the biggest trend in the academy. Everyone around them had begun to change. 𝒉 thought back to the weird events lately. The boy realized she was telling the truth and panicked once he knew she had no dice, suddenly shoving her away. 𝒉 crashed to the floor. Regret immediately hit the boy, and he apologized for his sudden, violent outburst. 𝒉 lay there as the boy stared at her, face turning red. Suddenly, both Arthur and Tristan received a magical notification about a brand new quest. A new quest appeared. In the hall, the boy decided he'd offer the beautiful 𝒉 to his order for more power. He told her to stay put, but she fought back, grabbing the pile of books to stop his escape. She slammed them on his head, making him scream. In pain, the boy grabbed her ankle, leaving the poor girl absolutely terrified. A new quest appeared, and the goal was simple: save a girl from a boy in the Hall of Echoes. Arthur knew it was his crush. He bolted toward the hall, leaving the rival dicer and the tower behind him. Our hero ran with everything he had. He finally reached the Hall of Echoes and noticed something was very wrong. Tristan was already there, smashing through the entrance. Arthur wondered if Tristan used a special skill to beat him there, but he focused, slamming his shoulder into the heavy door to force it open. Arthur stood right in front of 𝒉 and the boy. And that's where we leave it. Tristan already has the boy against the wall, and it's pure chaos. Wild, right? All right, you and I are about to witness a noble's fury as the boy tries to explain his crimes. Arthur rushes to Elizabeth, offering his hand and making sure the lady escaped the scuffle unharmed. He is relieved she is safe, but Julian is still choking the boy, who screams he only wanted to be a knight. The elite knight doesn't care, but the squire seems genuinely intrigued by the boy's desperate words. Elizabeth begs her suitor to stop, promising him that she isn't hurt at all. Arthur begs him to put the boy down before he ends up dead, screaming that the girl is safe, but right then, a strange vibration from his amulet startles our hero. Arthur is stunned, the quest is over, and the Archmage is ready to deliver the divine rewards. As the hero watches in disbelief, the relics begin to manifest, leaving the knights and the lady in complete shock. Elizabeth stares, captivated by her first look at the relics, 3 glowing blue stones materializing in the hall. The lady is trembling as she reaches out to touch the mysterious artifacts. Now pay attention. She realizes these were the treasures the boy was hunting before he got caught. He gasps that the relics can change destiny, but Julian slams him against the stone wall to silence him. The boy whines for mercy until a gentle hand reaches out to intervene. Elizabeth orders Julian to let him go, then asks how these relics appeared in the music hall. The boy pauses before declaring that a secret relic bearer is definitely among them, while Julian acts completely clueless, forcing his lady to turn her suspicious gaze toward Arthur. Arthur denies everything, but his heart hammers against his ribs as everyone's suspicion falls on him. He keeps his secret hidden, but Arthur grows anxious when the girl lets the matter drop with a sad, knowing smile. Later, as the sun sets over the kingdom, Arthur notices something strange while walking home. Arthur spots a magical projection showing a fatal end and wonders if Elizabeth smiled because she saw through his lies, or if she truly felt at peace in that moment. Arthur looks toward the stars and remembers. The lady now understands the relic's power, and the boy asks what she intends to do with them. Surprisingly, she keeps them since they have no master, and the Archmage is delighted to have a new chosen. Arthur is terrified at the thought of her becoming a bearer as she pauses to think. She points out the relics caused the boy's aggression, while he apologizes, explaining that all bearers are selfish people who form elite guilds and treat the weak like their personal servants. The blue stones pulse with light in the girl's palms. Elizabeth declares that these relics belong in fairy tales and decides to keep them hidden forever without using them, leaving everyone and even the Archmage himself completely baffled by her. You and I both know the world would be safer if these relics truly vanished forever. Meanwhile, at the Royal Academy, the boy stands trembling before the High Lord, who now knows Elizabeth possesses 3 blue relics she refuses to roll, and that both Arthur and Julian are lying about their true power as bearers. The boy confirms it, but the student doesn't believe him, being certain that Arthur is a relic user and having his suspicions about Julian as well. This captures the Lord's attention, as the student swears he will have his bloody revenge. The boy is terrified, but asks for a relic as payment for the information he brought. Even though the High Lord would have preferred the girl, he decides to grant the reward to his new servant. He hands over 2 red runes and explains his hierarchy. He explains the boy has risen from silver to gold and will receive a blue stone at sapphire rank, with even greater rewards waiting for him at the top. The poor kid can't believe his luck, but as he reaches for the master's hand, a heavy thud echoes as a brutal kick slams into the boy's chest, throwing him back, while the other student watches the poor minion collapse onto the floor. The Lord congratulates him for mastering his own strength, while the poor boy gasps for air on the ground, unable to even stand back up. The other student grinds his boot into the boy's face. He promises to turn him into a bearer after setting a trap where he can face Arthur alone without any interference. The school bells begin to toll. As the day was over, someone began to question his next actions. The nervous boy regrets approaching the guild and offering his sister's belongings after remembering how casually they kicked him into the dirt. He panics about setting up the trap for Arthur, fearing that if the other knights use their relics, his own dream is over, when suddenly a mysterious figure approaches him. And trust me, you and I are about to see a real surprise. Let's dive in. A mysterious girl appears, asking the young Dante if he is truly speaking of the legendary dice bearers. With a silver tongue, she tempted the boy to share his secrets and his entire journey with her. Later, our hero passed squires playing ball when it suddenly bounced his way. This caught his attention, as the children had unintentionally sent the sphere straight toward the dangerous main road. But just as the ball rolled into the path of a speeding carriage, to the children's horror, Dante's newfound agility kicked in. He snatched the ball before it could be crushed beneath the heavy wooden wheels. Watching the young ones rush toward him, our hero kindly returned their toy, leaving them completely awestruck. They hailed him as a champion, a real superhero. This warmed Dante's heart, reminding him of ancient tales where the masked guardian saved a peasant boy from a runaway wagon. The hero everyone admires, with the fair Lady Jane right by his side. The champion who wins the lady's hand when the story ends. Dante wondered if he could become such a legend once he reached the rank of High Dice Bearer. While staring at a painting of that night from the year 2003, Dante sat in a daze. He imagined confessing his secret identity to his lady love, explaining he only used his powers to protect the weak. He pictured himself defeating ruthless brigands and saving Eliza, dreaming of the day she would finally admire his courage. Dante felt certain the dice were not wicked. His companion, X, agreed, recalling how others viewed their users as mere fools. Now watch this. The stranger suggested stealing the lady's dice since keeping them hidden was a waste, but Dante refused. Our hero was finally ready to tell Eliza the truth about his powers and how a fallen friend's death sparked this chaos. His ally looked forward to it, the next dawn at the Royal Academy. Initiates whispered about the many empty seats and those who had suddenly gone missing. Some were wounded, while others hunted for magic dice as new guilds formed. One boy even swore his sword to any faction that would grant him the power of a bearer. Anju overheard rumors of a mysterious girl gifting dice to squires for free, which left her older brother deeply unsettled. Dante worried how Eliza would react once he revealed he was one of the gifted dice bearers himself. Though terrified, our hero was resolute, but just as he rose from his wooden bench to approach her, a girl approached Eliza for help with a difficult scroll, and she kindly agreed to assist her. Dante watched from the shadows as they spoke, deciding to wait for a better moment to confess. Later, he drew near but panicked and fled, promising himself he would try again during the midday break, leaving Eliza totally baffled. But by then, she was surrounded by friends, so our hero decided to wait until the sun set. Soon, the afternoon lessons finally began. The Grandmaster was troubled by the many empty chairs in Class 3. He urged the remaining squires to focus on their logic studies, noting how strangely everyone seemed to be growing more brilliant and beautiful by the day. Seeing the initiates were exhausted from their midday meal, he decided to share an ancient legend. But when he mentioned Pandora's box, the class groaned, already knowing the tragic story far too well. Eliza seemed distracted, and our hero felt a heavy weight, knowing he had to tread carefully with the truth. Everyone knew the legend. A jar, not a box, was given to her by the king of the gods, who filled it with divine inventions for her to guard. But let's pause for a second. Curiosity is a killer. She opened it, and every disaster known to man was unleashed upon our world. Our hero could not help but see the dice as their own version of that cursed jar. Suddenly, Dante's communication stone began to hum loudly, while the Grandmaster was still lecturing the class. He panicked as the device buzzed far louder than normal, but then he realized something strange about the noise. Dante was not the only one. Every initiate in the hall received a glowing notification at the exact same moment. A massive decree had been issued, a mission on a scale he had never seen before. A new trial was active. He reluctantly accepted the challenge, only to realize with horror that Eliza was the intended target. The bearers had until Saturday's sunset to strip the poor girl of her dignity and humiliate her publicly. They were ordered to steal her dice and capture a shameful image of her. Dante stood frozen in utter disbelief. Panic surged as he looked at his lady, who sat there looking completely lost, unaware she was now a target. The Grandmaster fumed as the constant buzzing interrupted his lesson, accusing the squires of planning this distraction together. The initiates ignored him, casting sinister glances at the clueless Eliza and whispering about the cruel mission ahead. Her friend tried to quiet the room, but the others quickly realized she was not one of the chosen. As the class urged the teacher to finish the legend, a dark lord watched, thrilled by the cruel hunt. "You and I both know things are about to get ugly. All right, stick with me, because the hunt is about to begin right now." Meanwhile, the local thugs were absolutely fuming at the mere thought of Arthur joining this deadly game. 3 girls were plotting too, eager to remove Alara and claim their throne as the Supreme Academy Queens. Just a little further, a mysterious girl laughed at the heartless quest. Every player in the city was buzzing with dark excitement. Up on the roof, Arthur screamed at the game master to stop this, but he just coldly refused. Our hero argued that Alara was completely innocent and knew nothing about their dangerous magical rules. The game master just laughed, claiming he makes the rules for fun before teasing Arthur about his obvious crush. Furious, Arthur shouted a vow to protect the innocent singer until the very end, no matter the cost. Down in the halls, 2 boys spotted Alara and realized she was clueless, deciding to ambush her once the timing was finally perfect. Alara overheard them planning something for the weekend, and a cold shiver of deep unease washed over her soul. Arthur remained determined to shield her until the countdown hit 0, and the threat finally vanished forever. "Now pay attention here," the game master asked if one boy could really stop an entire army. He decided to issue a unique custom quest. Our hero must now protect the target until the countdown finally ends. Arthur was stunned by the reward, a legendary mystery die with glowing question marks on every single face. That evening, Alara told her boyfriend Julian that she felt like 1,000 strange eyes were watching her today. Hearing this, Julian suggested escaping to a distant amusement park the very next day. But the girl declined because of practice. Julian stated he would be watching the practice session himself in that case. Julian realized it was going to be nearly impossible to keep his girlfriend out of the danger zone. Elsewhere, Someone was frantically flipping through a journal, searching for any data about that mysterious new dye. The records spoke of how red dice sync together, and how the game master thrives on creating pure chaos. There was nothing on the mystery die. Arthur decided to keep 12 red dice ready for his next move. Our hero related this entire situation to Pandora's box, which was closed far too late. Arthur wondered why hope was the only thing left in the jar in the first place. When morning came, Elara told her friend she was heading to the hall while her terrified friend urged her to hurry up. Every faction was moving, but Arthur was the fastest, rushing to the academy to protect his beloved and start the weekend. With his heart racing, our hero finally made his way toward Elara. Suddenly, the game master sent over the official data for the challenge. According to him, the quest began at 5:30 and lasts for 14 long hours. You and I better pay attention. The protagonist would have to fight off every single player tasked with assaulting the girl. The entity wondered about the final outcome. The master was thrilled for the carnage. Elara pushed open the doors and took a deep breath. She looked shocked. Meanwhile, Arthur stopped mid-stride as he stumbled upon a group of beaten teenagers lying on the floor. From the looks of it, Arthur knew they were players, and guessed a high-rank warrior had already been through this specific area. Elara was shocked to find Julian waiting for her, though she noticed fresh bruises on his hands. He lied, saying it was just a training injury. Hidden in the shadows, Arthur watched them as they walked away. Julian spotted him and sent a chilling glare that told Arthur to back off immediately. Arthur was annoyed. He knew Julian shouldn't be so arrogant since the real killers were still on the way. Later at the academy, Elara noticed that everyone who greeted them had arrived very early. Only the students present were attending today. They decided to start the music practice with the small group. Some classmates teased Arthur, asking if he was only there to flirt with the pretty girls in the room. Since the usual pianist was missing, a new female student stepped up to take the seat. You and I just met a dangerous new player. Her name is Isabella, and she is a deadly A-rank hunter. All right, you and I are entering a world where magic comes at a deadly price. Most seats sat empty. Tristan admired his lady on stage, but Arthur was spellbound by her haunting performance. Julian noticed and waved to the quiet boy, who immediately waved back with pure joy. It was nearly 11 in the morning, marking the 6th hour of the quest. Arthur wondered if he had overestimated how desperate these rune seekers were for their magic. But then Tristan approached our hero and claimed his presence was not needed for the task. He promised he could protect the lady alone, stating that it seemed like the other magic users were no longer as interested in the prize as they were before. Arthur began to consider these words carefully. But little did he know he was being watched from afar. The Earl of the family stated the first 2 warriors were guarding the girl and ordered his men to start the plan. Arthur felt a sudden chill, as if invisible eyes were locked onto him. Now watch closely, because this is where the performance takes a dark turn as the lights flicker. Arthur froze in horror, while Elara remained completely unaware of the looming disaster above her. Tristan dashed for the exit, but found the heavy oak doors were bolted shut. He was trapped. Our hero was horrified as the lights began to fall, making Morgana smile in secret. The heavy iron was about to crush the girls in the choir. Arthur charged toward the stage shouting a warning, but he was too late. The heavy metal had already crashed down. Arthur stood there in absolute shock. Julian was trembling, realizing that a certain death had missed him by a mere inch. Arthur checked on the girl, who was miraculously unharmed. Meanwhile, Morgana began to creep toward Elara with a wicked grin. Meanwhile, the Earl was watching from afar and ordered his minions to begin the next phase of the plan, as one of them reached for the master power switch, cutting the magic instantly. The entire hall was plunged into total darkness. Both warriors realized this was no accident. Arthur checked his target again, but a dark figure was already closing in, using magical night sight. With her vision enhanced, Morgana moved through the blackness, ready to snatch the poor girl by surprise. And just like that, Morgana grabbed the terrified Alara from behind. The terrified girl wondered who her attacker was, but Morgana told her to keep quiet, threatening to scar her face. With that, she was dragged into the dark. I know what you are thinking. Where did she go? Arthur calls her name into the void but hears only a haunting silence. Blinded by the shadows, our protagonist pulled out his enchanted device to create a small spark of light. He resumed his search, but the glow was too dim. He would have to use his fate runes. Arthur called upon the entity X, who confirmed he had 12 active red runes. X stated the young man had successfully rolled a total of 12 of them. Arthur decided to use 10 of his 44 skill points to finally acquire the ability known as night vision. And so the synchronization began, magically improving our hero's eyes. By the end, Arthur had 34 skill points left and superior vision that let him see clearly without any light. But in that moment, he realized his beloved was gone. Seeing the drag marks, he knew Morgana had taken Alara into the depths of the castle. Our protagonist sprinted toward the faint light ahead, desperate to rescue Alara before it was too late. As he ran, he remembered his fallen comrade's words. He pictured the boy's legendary left arm. He recalled being told that rune seekers could gain powers far beyond any normal human reach. Arthur wondered if his own growing skills were already crossing into the realm of the supernatural. He was not sure if he had surpassed humanity yet, but he knew rune seekers were superior to common men. Arthur wondered what awaited him next. Suddenly, he spotted a figure dragging another through the corridors. Without warning, an assassin waiting in the shadows ambushed him with a powerful kick. Arthur managed to evade the blow. He was shocked by the attacker, who immediately launched another strike aimed at his legs, but our hero jumped back to safety just in time, creating some needed distance. Our protagonist looked at his foe. Arthur gasped as he realized he recognized the man standing before him. Meanwhile, back at the hall, the henchman confirmed this phase was a success, while Tristan realized his lady was gone, and Arthur had already gone to pursue the kidnappers. He decided he had to restore the magic lights to join the chase. He located the power switch and calculated the distance was finally perfect for his next move. Tristan pressed a button on his device and activated the power of blink using his magic. And trust me, things are just getting started. After entering the sacred coordinates, Alistair triggered the ancient teleportation spell. A ring of light erupted under his feet as he vanished, leaving the noble house guards completely baffled and confused. Stick with me here, because Alistair was about to catch everyone off guard with his next move. Alistair slammed the guard's head into the glass before tossing him away like a piece of garbage. Light flooded the great hall again as the power returned, leaving the knights wondering who actually fixed the mana. The Duke stood there amazed, suddenly thrilled at the idea of showing Alistair the power of his knightly guild. Meanwhile, Alara was still being dragged along by a female knight who threw her into a dark stone chamber before she demanded some answers. The girl claimed this was all part of the pact, even though she really wanted to break Alara her own way. Now pay attention, because our target was about to get truly confused by what happened next. Beatrice mocked her, saying this was just a divine quest before locking Alara alone in the dark to face her absolute terror. Cedric ordered his attacker, the same man from the funeral, to get out of his way right now. The killer laughed, stating they had met before and still had a very old blood debt to settle. Locked inside that dark chamber, Alara stared at the glowing blue crystals as she began to realize the gravity of her dangerous situation. The knights were intrigued as a mysterious shadow restored the lights in the mana room. Trust me on this, Alistair was about to run into something he definitely did not hear coming down those stairs. Alistair was stunned to find the entire hall filled with students, all looking for a fight with him. The dark energy coming from them absolutely terrified the poor maiden nearby. The Grand Master stepped forward, welcoming Alistair to his first real clash with their legendary order. Surprisingly, Alistair just smiled, even though the young hero only had 9 points of magical energy left to use. He chose to save his magic and handle this all alone. But right then, one of the knights lunged at him for a surprise strike. He tried to strike him down. You and I just witnessed Alistair prove exactly why you should never, ever underestimate a smiling man in a deadly fight like this. Stick with me. Dante is about to settle scores with this dice guild. Dante asks his mysterious attacker if he is here for the young noblewoman, but the man makes it crystal clear. He is only here to hunt Dante, ignoring everyone else. Feeling awkward, Dante simply claims he has no interest in him. The attacker goes red, shouting that his intentions are anything but romantic. He wants revenge for a past humiliation. Suddenly, it clicks. Dante realizes this knight is actually the same brute who once terrorized the academy. The brute grins, thrilled that his target finally remembers his face. Years ago, he loved tormenting the weak. But then Dante stepped in, risking everything to protect a fellow student, even though Dante himself was usually the one getting bullied. Now pay attention here. This is the moment Dante lands a devastating punch, sending the bully crashing down while our hero finally turns to help his friend. It was shocking. How did the school's favorite punching bag suddenly find such strength? He saw Dante hand over a shimmering artifact, a magic die. Soon after, the entire academy was buzzing with rumors about the boy's new power. Every whisper about Dante crushing his rivals only fueled the bully's growing rage and annoyance. The memory of that punch haunted him. He spent countless nights waking up in a cold sweat, forced to relive that soul-crushing humiliation in his dreams over and over. But the dark truth finally comes to light when he stumbles upon the cold body of a dead man. He stood frozen as he stared at a blood-soaked floor and a mysterious, glowing artifact left behind by the dead. In the end, he decided to claim it. Returning to the fight, he asks if Dante understands what it feels like to finally master these ancient artifacts. You and I both know how greedy these villains are. He actually regrets not stealing every single magic die when he had the chance. He admits he was only hesitant back then because of the dead body nearby. To him, that day was a golden opportunity where he only managed to grab a small piece of the pie. Hearing him laugh makes Dante boil with rage. People actually died for those cursed dice. The brute lunges forward with incredible speed. Dante barely dodges a lethal kick to the head, realizing his opponent is stronger and faster than ever before. And that's where we leave it. Things are about to get even crazier. You and I are jumping right into the action. Dante flinches, barely dodging a bone-shattering kick that craters the stone floor. His opponent's magic is clearly all in his legs. All right, stick with me because Dante is about to face a lethal surprise attack from his rival. Dante had no choice but to block a brutal kick that sent him flying back several meters. The knight mocked him, saying exhausted Dante lacked physical power and had completely overlooked one vital mistake in his plan. He should have prepared when the magic wielders multiplied, then revealed he used enchanted cubes to turn his legs into powerful weapons. Dante was faster than his opponent, but pure speed wasn't going to be enough. That speed meant nothing against the rival's reach, leaving our hero trapped as the clock ticked down against him. With Alina's life on the line, he knew he had to end this fight as fast as humanly possible. The battle of powers began, while elsewhere in the castle hall, Tristan was still pinned down by waves of enemies. The elite warrior was absolutely dominating his cowardly foes. Tristan spun and shattered a guard's arm with a single, devastating kick, crushing him instantly while the surrounding noble guards whispered in terror that he was truly invincible. The Lord couldn't hide his shock. He hated using his elite Fire Fox squad, but it was the only way to stop Tristan from healing his strength. Ready for more, the warrior braced for impact. Now let's switch gears to the storeroom. Alina is screaming for help until she realizes it's hopeless. But then a wild idea hits her as she pulls out the glowing blue dice she's been hiding from everyone. This made her pause and think deeply. She remembered being told these cubes could rewrite a person's beauty or power with just a single magical roll. Her captor had mocked her, saying ordinary people would never understand the true nature of the cube's power. Alina stared intensely at the artifact, her blue eyes filled with focus. As she stared at the cube, the heavy door suddenly slammed open, startling her, as the mysterious boy finally found Alina locked away in the darkness. Meanwhile, Cedric was still dancing through the fray, dodging kicks aimed at his head and feet before creating some space. The brute grew frustrated that our hero refused to stand still and fight like a man. Cedric wondered if he should spend his final 34 points just to end this annoying thug once and for all. Back in the Great Hall, more hidden attackers were lurking in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. One greedy guard hiding in the corridor watched the chaos unfold. He questioned if the gold was worth the danger, but his partner assured him it definitely was. He pulled out a magical parchment, explaining they earned rewards for every insult and cruel picture they took, suggesting they harass her further to earn a massive pile of dice. One of them asked if they could take things even further. The leader explained that such cruelty was reserved for the Lord, making the man look like a complete monster. A sudden loud crash echoed nearby, making them wonder if the real fight was starting, as the two guards debated how to use their cubes. You and I both know how greedy these guys are, wanting fame or even a spot at the Royal Academy. Just then, a portly student approached them, realizing these two were also magic users. He believed the Lord would grant him powers too, if his mission was a total success. The others looked at him with pity, before revealing his entire life was based on a lie. They laughed, stating the red cubes the Lord gave were just cheap fakes bought at a common street market. They told him to follow the other kids and run for his life, but then the heavy iron door burst open as a knight ordered them to attack the lone warrior. To their shock, the student realized this was their chance to hoard massive power, rallying the troops to charge into the fray. They cornered Tristan, who was already gasping for air after defeating dozens of men, but more enemies kept coming. The Lord shouted words of encouragement to his second wave. He screamed that Tristan was exhausted and only needed one solid hit to fall, promising Silas that whoever struck the final killing blow would win massive rewards and the Lord's supreme favor. The first attacker charged blindly at the warrior, but Tristan was lightning fast, ending the man's night with a single, brutal strike to the chest. Meanwhile, back at the duel, Dante decided to invest his points again. The mysterious voice asked which ability he wanted to awaken. Our hero poured 10 full points into his agility, which only made the rival laugh, assuming Dante actually thought pure speed could save his life. Trust me, watch this finish. Trust me, Alistair is about to push his body past its breaking point. The overseer warned of injury, but our hero didn't care. Charging forward, he stunned the brute by suddenly launching himself into the air. Alistair landed on the window ledge, surprising his foe. The brute swung and missed, shattering the glass into a million pieces. Shards flew everywhere, leaving the enemy temporarily blinded as he scrambled to find Alistair. But Alistair was already right behind him, ready to deliver a crushing kick. Meanwhile, over in the Great Hall, Sir Tristan approached Silas, the only one who hadn't attacked, but noticed a sharp blade hidden in his hand. Tristan was shocked. Someone here actually had the guts to try and stab him. The terrified boy dropped the knife, begging Tristan for mercy and claiming he wasn't even one of the chosen. Tristan turned to Lord Thorn, who was starting to panic after seeing Tristan's overwhelming power firsthand. He turned to his final servant, reminding him that this was his one chance to become a vessel. If he didn't stand his ground now, he'd never be worthy. Silas grabbed the weapon, fueled by his desire for the dice, and charged at Tristan from behind with the blade. And just like that, Tristan is stabbed in the back. Watch closely, because the boy can't even process the blood on the floor. Back with Alistair, he landed a perfect kick to the brute's head, knocking him out before he could even react. Alistair took a moment to catch his breath, making sure his opponent was truly beaten. With only 6 hours and 15 minutes left, he raced toward the tower to rescue his beloved Lady Alara. She gasped as the heavy doors swung open, revealing a shadowy figure that left her completely speechless. His face was hidden in the darkness. Meanwhile, Alistair kept calling her name as he searched the corridors. He waited for an answer, but only silence followed. The brute was confused, hearing rumors that Alara held dice that she simply refused to roll. He mocked her for being too prideful, acting like she was already perfect while others bled for power, noting even Alistair used the dice to get ahead. The angry brute demanded to know why Alistair would protect someone like that, leaving our hero momentarily stunned. But with no time to lose. He kept searching, screaming Alara's name. Alistair first met her at the academy and thought she was quite strange. But he soon realized she was a pure soul with a noble heart, loved by absolutely everyone. Alara was the dream of every young squire, including Alistair himself. She was so relieved to see a friendly face like Alistair's in a music hall full of strangers. Even as her friends mocked her for talking to him, Alistair was shocked by how kind she could be. Now, Alistair is replaying the brute's question in his head. You and I can see he's clearly conflicted. Back in the storage room, the poor girl begged the stranger to stay away. It was that boy from earlier. Alara threatened to scream for help, but to her absolute horror. He claimed no one would hear her, no matter how loud she screamed. He was a vessel now, with a much darker purpose in mind. He pulled something from his pocket. Alara began to fear the absolute worst. He showed her a glowing slate, a message from the overseer meant for her. Alara couldn't believe the mysterious magic. The voice identified itself as the overseer and said it wanted to speak with her. Meanwhile, Tristan was still reeling from the boy's betrayal. He quickly punched the attacker away. The knife hit the floor. Tristan stood in silence, touching the wound and finding his hand covered in blood. The boy began to weep in terror. Lord Thorn laughed, thinking the fight was over and telling Tristan to surrender. But the knight just stood there, gasping for air. The boy sobbed that it was an accident. But the boss praised him for the strike. Tristan stared coldly at the trembling boy, who cried out that he just wanted to become a vessel. In that moment, Tristan saw his own desperate past in the boy's eyes, putting him in a tough spot. Back in the room, the overseer revealed itself to her. The entity claimed to be the game master who had sent these players after her. Alara demanded he show himself, but the overseer only had one question. You and I will have to wait for her answer. Stick with me. Alina was weighing the absolute power of being a dicer. 𝒐𝒔𝒆 figured she either felt superior to everyone or, like him, simply lived for the chaos. He pointed out the world was suffering, asking Alina if she didn't want to finally reach perfection. Back at the Great Hall, seeing Silas wounded reignited the morale and courage of the soldiers, who were now certain they could win without any outside help. As for Arthur, he desperately searched every corner of the academy to find her. Our hero wasn't even sure why he was protecting Tristan's girlfriend, who would likely be disappointed to learn he was a dicer and might even despise him. Still, his feelings for her gave Arthur all the motivation he needed to keep Alina safe. So he screamed her name once more. The girl froze, shocked by the sound of his distant voice. Recognizing the voice, she realized Arthur was now drawing closer to the academy storeroom. Suddenly, Alina was silenced just as she tried to shout her position. Arthur paused, certain he had heard something, before continuing his search. Inside the storeroom, things were taking a dark turn. The poor girl tried to scream, but the horrified Alina was left powerless as the boy muffled her voice. Unaware, Arthur continued to drift further and further away. Startled, the girl realized the game master wanted to chat in peace, asking once more why she refused to use the power of the dice. But she couldn't answer while the boy held her mouth shut. Once she could speak again, the girl insisted she never believed she was better than anyone else. 𝒐𝒔𝒆 began to mock her, realizing the girl was simply trying to live with what she already had. Alina fell silent, eventually asking 𝒐𝒔𝒆 if his dice could reshape the people around a dicer, just as they transformed the user themselves. That single question sent a shockwave through both the game master and the boy. Feeling nervous, 𝒊𝒐𝒍𝒔 laughed it off as a joke, claiming he had never considered it. Alina stared at the screen with cold eyes while the game master grew curious about who she wanted to change. Despite her pleas, the game master refused to answer until he heard her true motives first. Alina realized that changing others might be impossible since the game master wouldn't confirm it. Now, watch this. 𝒊𝒐𝒍𝒔 points out he never said it was impossible, tempting Alina to grab the dice and find out for herself. A confused Julian thought for a second before finally asking the game master what the point of these quests was. He simply replied that he did it all for the thrill of the game, an answer that absolutely horrified her. 𝒊𝒐𝒍𝒔 enjoyed watching everyone dance in the palm of his hand for the sake of the dice, finally asking Alina to join the competition. This insane game master was desperate to have her as a player. But Alina stood her ground, declaring she would never become a dicer. This left 𝒊𝒐𝒍𝒔 disappointed, having seen her great potential. He waved goodbye to Alina, who then suddenly witnessed a strange, glowing light. A sudden purple glow erupted from the boy's screen, signaling a terrifying new update to the quest. She feared the worst, as their exact location was leaked to everyone. The other dicers were stunned by the update that added a live map. Every dicer was now on high alert, as the game master broadcasted Alina's location, while boosting the mission's rewards to an insane level. With the clock still ticking, 𝒊𝒐𝒍𝒔 urged every single player to charge straight toward the poor girl. Alina finally realized she was the main target of this quest. The boy then asked if he was free to use her however he pleased, and 𝒊𝒐𝒍𝒔 confirmed it. Watch closely. He grabs the poor girl and slams her against the wall. But just then, a thunderous voice ordered him to stop. Arthur burst into the room, making the boy realize that every dicer was now converging on them. Without a second thought, our hero landed a massive kick to his head, knocking him out cold. This amused the game master, but most importantly, it saved Alina from a nightmare. Arthur struggled to catch his breath before asking a stunned Alina if she was injured, feeling massive relief when he saw she was okay. Before she could even ask how he found her so fast, Arthur grabbed her hand and told her he would explain everything later as they ran for the door. But the moment they stepped out, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed down the hall. Arthur heard them and instantly pivoted, leaving Alina completely in awe of her savior's quick thinking. Suddenly, they ran into a mob of dicers on the stairs, all hungry for the prize, which absolutely thrilled the game master. He compared the whole scene to a classic zombie movie. Since the target was no longer trapped, the enemy leader realized his entire plan had just gone up in smoke. With that, the entire pack began their hunt for Alina. Leaving Thomas behind, Arthur knows he must protect Alina for 2 more hours. You and I are about to see if he survives. All right, you and I are diving into a chase where every knight is out for blood, while a mysterious figure enjoys the show. The Grandmaster watched with a smirk as our young hero, Arthur, sprinted toward the tower heights while a mob closed in. Arthur reached the top and slammed the gates, surprising the overseer as the sun began to dip. Arthur figured they had a moment of peace and asked Lady Alara to help bar the entrance. But then, something felt very wrong. With her voice trembling, Alara gathered her resolve and asked him straight out if he was truly one of the gifted. At that exact second, the swarm of hunters outside realized their prey was cornered right above them on the roof. Arthur stood frozen by the accusation. Alara needed to know, was her protector actually one of those power-hungry chosen ones? Before she could press him, the mob hammered against the wood, screaming for them to unlatch the gates immediately. Panic set in. Arthur knew the trial was far from over, and time was running out much faster than expected. Arthur swore he would explain absolutely everything once they were safe, but as he tried to lead her away, Alara gripped his sleeve with desperate, trembling strength. With tears falling, Alara began to beg. She knew why the hounds were at the door, and the fear that Arthur might be playing her just like the rest was breaking her heart. The wood splintered as hunters closed in, leaving Arthur trapped between his secrets and the truth. Alara swore she could handle the truth if he just spoke it, But Arthur was stuck, struggling to find the words for this nightmare. Pay attention here. Arthur looks back at the chaos he went through, wondering where it all went so wrong. Arthur finally confessed the truth to 𝑳𝒐𝒉. Meanwhile, one of the attackers outside couldn't even budge the door because he had spent all his blessings on his looks instead of strength, annoying his partner. Desperate, the mob started shouting for any warrior who actually trained for strength to step up and break the gate. But to smash through that barricade. A brawl erupted as the faster scouts tried to push past the warriors to claim the glory for themselves. Suddenly, a cold voice commanded them to stop their pathetic bickering as Lady Margaret and her elite squad finally arrived on the scene. A rogue knight snapped back at her for being so arrogant, but one icy glare from the girl on her left silenced him instantly. The long-haired warrior reminded them that they only had 1 hour until dusk, and the prize was still waiting behind those doors. Back on the rooftop, the heavy silence made everything feel incredibly awkward after Arthur's confession to Lady 𝑳𝒐𝒉. 𝑳𝒐𝒉 asked if he was just mocking her like the others, but Arthur nearly blurted out his true feelings while trying to deny it. She looked him in the eyes and asked if he was forced into this twisted hunt. He was ready to say no, but then he remembered the secret mission the overseer gave him, leaving him completely speechless. Suddenly, the gates came crashing down. The nightmare was finally entering the room for Arthur and 𝑳𝒐𝒉. Down in the great hall, the house lord was fuming, wondering how his master plan had collapsed into such a miserable failure. Tristan mocked the lord for being betrayed by his own men, asking if there were any more warriors left to challenge him before turning toward a terrified squire nearby. You and I watched Tristan just walk away. He ignored the shaking boy and the furious lord who was screaming for him to stay put, feeling insulted that Tristan wouldn't even look at him. Tristan kept moving, making the lord snap and charge at him, but our warrior caught his arm in a death grip and simply refused to let him go. With a single, monstrous punch, Tristan sent the amateur lord flying clear across the entire hall. That raw strength was absolutely terrifying. He bragged that his blessings were all spent on endurance, making such physical attacks completely useless against him. Tristan just tightened his fist and gave him a terrifying glare, scaring the lord so badly that he actually faked a faint right there. Bleeding from his side, Tristan kept limping toward his goal, leaving a dark trail on the cold stone floor. Watching him struggle, the overseer asked if he was truly doing all this just to save 𝑳𝒐𝒉, or if he had a secret motive. He grunted that if he didn't step in, the cycle would just repeat itself with even more power-hungry monsters. The Grandmaster sat back, wondering if one boy could really change destiny. The overseer told Tristan to stop playing around and face the true elites, fueling his rage. Meanwhile, back at the tower, the hunt had found its prey. With a roar, the mob charged Arthur all at once. Arthur and 𝑳𝒐𝒉 tried to run, but they were trapped as the greedy knights closed in, desperate to claim the prize of the trial. Everything looked completely hopeless for our heroes. Below them, Tristan was crawling up the stairs in agony, leaving a bloody trail in his wake. And that's where we leave it. Tristan refuses to heal his wounds, even with sunset just minutes away. Trust me, you and I need to see what's next. Stick with me, because this rescue mission is about to go south fast. Dante knew the plan. They just had to hold their ground until the clock ran out. But standing firm was getting harder by the second, and he desperately needed a way out. He debated using all 24 skill points to buff his body and leap away with Alina. But he killed the idea, knowing one mistake would hurt her and more seekers waited below. Suddenly, mid-thought, an initiate charged at them, brandishing a sharp pair of scissors in his hand. Dante narrowly dodged the lethal stab and stood there completely stunned alongside Alina before ending the entire fight with one massive, crushing punch. The boy collapsed, dropping the sharp tool right at the feet of another greedy seeker. As the next student reached for the blade, Dante shouted at him to stay back. He swore to crush anyone who stepped forward, making the crowd freeze in pure terror before they shoved one of their own to the front. The students argued that since Dante was a seeker too, he should help them finish the hunt. But our hero stood firm. Dragging innocent people into seeker games was absolutely wrong. They didn't care about justice, though, convinced Alina had promised him some massive reward for his protection. Now watch this part closely. Dante promises Alina they only have to survive until the sun sets. The crowd wavered, unsure of their next move. Then, the students pulled out phones to take humiliating photos, just as the archdeceiver ordered, blinding our hero with a storm of camera flashes. The twisted game master watched the scene unfold, laughing that these shots weren't nearly cruel enough. This pushed the desperate seekers to start plotting their next move against the cornered pair. 3 girls stepped out of the crowd, claiming they would hurt and strip Alina themselves as they walked forward. One grabbed the scissors, realizing Dante was only acting tough to buy more time for his friend. She smirked, challenging our protagonist to see how long he could actually hold out against them. These 3 were dangerous. One had enhanced vision, one had agility, and the last had massive strength. You and I both know Dante won't back down, but this fight is about to get messy. The agile girl lunged forward, but a desperate scream from behind made Dante spin around in shock. Alina was standing on the ledge, threatening to jump off the roof if they didn't stop fighting. Everyone froze in horror, knowing that if she fell, the quest was over and no one would get the prize. Even the game master was stunned, while Dante desperately hoped she was only acting to buy time. He tried to reach for her, but Alina screamed for him to stay away or she would jump. Her attackers tried to play nice, claiming they only wanted the magic crystals for themselves. Alina looked at them with pure disgust, seeing how the prize had turned them all into monsters. She recognized old friends behind those magically altered faces and asked if this power was worth their lost peace. But they just scoffed. Since Alina was born beautiful, she couldn't understand their burning desire for the prize. She begged them to listen, asking if assaulting an innocent was truly an acceptable way to get ahead. Right then, Taryn arrived on the roof to witness the total chaos. Seeing the others actually hesitate, the agile girl with the scissors snapped in a fit of rage. She charged at Alina with the blade raised, refusing to hear another word of her preaching. Dante kicked into super speed while Taryn used teleportation, but they were both a second too late. The scissors sliced through Alina's clothes, sending her stumbling back and tripping off the high rooftop. To everyone's absolute horror, she plummeted toward the ground in what looked like certain death. Dante and Taryn moved as fast as lightning, but the damage to the girl was already done. As Alina plummeted toward the earth, Dante pushed his super speed to the absolute limit, racing toward her and grabbing her hand just before she hit the hard ground. He strained every muscle in his body, refusing to let her slip away into the dark abyss. Taryn watched as Dante hauled her up, while Alina stared at the mysterious new seeker in confusion. Using his last 2 points, Dante teleported them 20 meters to safety, finally pulling her out of danger. And that's where we leave it, trust me, you're not ready for what happens next. All right, you and I are about to witness Arthur checking Alina's old injury. He finds the slash across her back, wondering if the quest is actually over. Alina laughs and demands Archon send the reward for wounding the target, but he refuses. Archon explains only her clothes were shredded, leaving the girl shocked since she felt the strike. Then the game master reveals the truth. That cut was already there. The students realize it's just an old scar, leaving poor Alina completely mortified and silent. Arthur immediately throws his cloak around the girl, catching her off guard with his gentlemanly move. The shy knight starts scolding her with a bright blush, shouting that her actions were reckless since Tristan and he were already there to protect her from the mob. With that, he looks at Tristan, realizing the rival was also fighting to keep Alina safe the whole time. Sarah wonders about the drama, while Arthur proposes a truce with Tristan until the quest ends. Sunset is coming. With 8 minutes left on the clock, the enemy leader orders a final charge. The mob of players rushes them from every single side. Arthur opens with a heavy kick to disarm a foe, while Tristan easily parries and counters. Now a powerhouse female warrior steps up for her turn. Arthur barely dodges a punch that shatters the stone floor before blocking a lethal follow-up kick. With only 5 minutes remaining, the entire crowd rushes toward Alina, desperate to finish their mission for the reward while the clan boss moves in to end it. Watch closely, because the entire quest is about to spin out of control. A mysterious girl watches silently as Arthur and Tristan hold the line against the horde. But as the leader reaches the roof, she suddenly kicks him back with devastating force. They tumble down the stone stairs, never catching a glimpse of the silent shadow that just struck them down. Arthur struggles to repel the final wave, with only 60 seconds remaining on the timer. The sun vanishes, the clock hits 0, the mission is officially declared a total failure. Archon pokes fun at the losers, but promises that plenty more games are coming soon. The players are disgusted, unable to handle such a loss. Silas is just glad Alina's safe. Everyone is catching their breath when their phones suddenly buzz with a new notification. She turns to our hero. Why does his screen say success? Arthur just earned himself a legendary golden mystery die. Suddenly, a blinding pillar of golden light erupts right in front of the entire group. Arthur stands there, holding a prize that bears a glowing question mark on every side. You saw that, right? That is no ordinary prize our hero is holding. If blue dice boost skills, this golden one should grant power far beyond human limits. It sounded like a myth in Barnaby's old notebook, but now it's real and in his hand. Arthur is stunned, but the others are drowning in envy that he's the only winner today. They are absolutely furious seeing him rewarded, while they get nothing but a loss. The group begins to speculate that Arthur was actually on a secret solo quest, leading them to view him as a deceitful player instead of the savior they once imagined. Our hero is left speechless by their hateful accusations. Alina wants answers, but Arthur is too overwhelmed to even find the right words. As the crowd's malice grows, Tristan realizes something is very wrong. Arthur tries to speak, but the words won't come. Suddenly, Tristan collapses to his knees. Alina rushes over to find her boyfriend bleeding heavily, sending her into a total panic. Tristan makes eye contact, trying to warn Arthur about the golden die, but the sound fails him. Alina jumps as Arthur approaches them with a grim face. The terrified girl tries to explain everything to our shocked hero, but he already senses a dark shadow closing in right behind his back. Trust me, you and I are going to want to see the fallout of that strike. The enemy vessels charged at the broken boy as he hit the dirt. Duke Thorn began to laugh, finally seeing his chance to crush the hero. With that, he glared at Tristan, who could barely stand, ready to finish the massacre that started at the Grand Hall. Stick with me. Alistair once thought these dice brought happiness since everyone wanted to be better, but now he felt only regret. The vessels then charged at the poor girl, ready to strip her of her dice even though the sun was setting. They swarmed Lady Alara, desperate for her power. To Alistair's horror, a weakened Tristan could no longer fight back. But the vessels told her to worry about herself. They were taking her dice by force, with or without her cooperation. Alara ran to the cliff's edge, making them think she was jumping, trying one last desperate move to escape. She was cornered again by the hungry vessels, who quickly reached out and grabbed her. In that moment, Alistair's blood boiled as he saw his beloved being dragged away against her will, terrified and alone. Seeing this, the hero punched his way out and dashed forward. With fury in his eyes, he rushed to save Alara. But in his rush, he accidentally dropped the golden dice. The mysterious artifact hit the ground and began to spin wildly. As it turned red, ancient runes replaced the symbols on its 6 faces. Watch this. The dice activated, allowing our hero to level up and expand his massive skill tree. Once the synchronization was complete, the special dice landed on a hard glass symbol. Alistair rushed to rescue Alara in this moment of panic, where our hero, and his 24 remaining soul points, obtained a powerful new skill. The protagonist rushed to save her as the purple light appeared right behind him. The Arbiter then asked if he wanted to use his 24 soul points to enhance his new skill. The protagonist desperately screamed for them to stop. Suddenly, the ancient power of the dice filled the entire area. Ilara's tears were frozen in the air as all the students were rendered motionless, to Alastair's total surprise. The young man was left baffled, having a hard time believing his own two eyes. Alastair stood there confused, unable to comprehend the situation. His cloak along with a nearby bird were frozen in place. Now pay attention. Our hero noticed something odd on his device. Despite being frozen in time, a weird symbol appeared on his screen. The same hourglass symbol from the dice was now on his screen. With that, 6 new mysterious skills entered the play. Everyone was frozen. The girl and her attackers, along with Tristan and the head of House Thorn. Alastair looked around, baffled by what happened as he was the only one granted mobility, while everything else stayed frozen. So he approached his device, only to pick it up and find a glowing hourglass icon on it. Suddenly, the device began to vibrate in the boy's hand as it displayed a bright countdown. X confirmed that he really was the one who stopped time using the gold dice. This skill was called Time Pause, allowing its user to stop the flow of time for 10 seconds for each soul point used, and granting motion to anything he touches. As the game master confirmed that everything would remain motionless if Alastair didn't touch it. He realized he had obtained an inhuman power. X then proceeded to congratulate the young man on becoming a sovereign. The term sovereign intrigued the young man. Alastair guessed each person got a different ability based on their role, but the master advised him to focus on the remaining time. Our hero was left with 3 minutes of frozen time. He wanted to take Ilara and run away with her. But even if they escaped, Ilara would still be the prey of House Thorn as long as she held those blue dice. It would also be impossible for the girl to leave the wounded Tristan behind. Alastair found the situation challenging, but he looked at the head of the family and suddenly got a brilliant idea. With time still frozen and Ilara's clothes ripped, our hero did his best to cover her with his cloak without looking. When his hand came in contact with her, a confused Ilara was startled as she was suddenly freed from the freeze. The panicked girl then turned to Alastair. Our hero reassured her and asked the confused girl to follow his plan. He was determined to end this quest forever. Just then, the skill reached its end and the flow of time resumed. The vessels who tried to grab Ilara fell down. Everyone was confused as the girl suddenly disappeared. Then a voice told them that they had failed the quest. Alastair affirmed that they could never find Ilara, no matter how hard they tried. Trust me, you and I are about to see one hell of a showdown, as the vessels demanded the gold dice, and Alastair challenged them to a fight. All right, you and I are about to watch Sir Dante challenge an entire legion alone. As the night swung, Dante vanished into thin air, only to reappear behind the group, leaving them in a state of utter confusion. Enraged, the warriors decided to surround him, attacking from both sides to trap him in a deadly corner. Dante reappeared behind them once again, mocking their skills and revealing that he had attained a legendary power beyond their reach. Lord X watched with glee as the new master spent his remaining essence on time stasis, which appeared as instant movement to the naked eye. Sir Tabin recognized the legendary skill and could not believe how lucky Dante was to obtain such a rare and powerful gift of fate. While the hidden lady Uju watched everything from the shadows, she remembered how he told her to hide and wondered exactly how he planned to bring this chaotic duel to an end. Suddenly, the High Lord of the house grabbed Dante from behind, ordering his men to strike while he held him fast. Now watch this part closely. Just as the punch connects, time itself begins to freeze in an instant. The High Lord, who is still touching our hero, was left baffled and completely paralyzed by the sudden, eerie stillness of the world. Panic set in as he realized that the entire flow of time had simply stopped. He realized this was the work of a High Lord, but just then, the knight slipped and Dante grabbed him by his robes. Just like that, he held the villain by the neck, completely at his mercy. The desperate High Lord screamed for his life, begging the young knight to release him. Dante pointed out his mistake, making the villain beg not to be dropped from the edge of the high castle tower. The master smiled as the stasis ended, letting the goons see their leader in such a pathetic and vulnerable position before them all. Dante then announced he had a message for everyone regarding the spread of the magical fate stones throughout the kingdom. He questioned their connection to the game master, causing a wave of intense whispers to break out among the shocked rune knights. He revealed the stones appeared a month ago, recalling a specific tragedy at the academy that the very first rune knight would surely remember. At that moment, every knight present realized that something massive was finally being revealed. While Tabin feared the worst, Lady Yanju was left completely lost and confused. You see, it all began with the fall of Byunjil, a man Dante personally granted a fate stone. This meant the entire crowd owed their power to him, and the revelation left everyone absolutely speechless. Lady Anju was in total disbelief, but Dante clearly had much more to declare to the gathered crowd. He announced the birth of his own order, separate from the corrupt great houses. The girl could not believe that all this chaos was actually Dante's doing from the start. She was left speechless, while Sir Tabin and the others were stunned by the sheer boldness of his new group's vision. Sir Dong reaffirmed his goal to create a band of knights, choosing to call it an order since this world felt like a game. He invited everyone to join, promising to share his wisdom and help them complete their holy quests in order to reach the rank of High Lord themselves. Let us see what happens next. He offered them the choice to join or decline, warning that he would show no mercy to those who chose to be enemies. The fallen High Lord used the chance to invite the knights to join his own dark house instead of Dante's order. Hearing this, Dante tightened his grip, making his captive fear that his life was finally coming to a violent end. But our hero tossed the coward to safety, who quickly fled the scene, swearing to return with the full might of his family. Uninterested in such petty squabbles, the three noblewomen turned their backs and left the castle roof without a single word. Dante watched them depart in silence. They wondered if he would truly help with the quests without demanding gold or relics, and if he would share the stones with regular students. Dante swore he would remain true to his word, but imposed two strict laws that caught everyone's immediate and curious attention. First, it would be strictly forbidden to involve innocent civilians in their nightly battles and affairs. Sir Tabin was stunned as Dante declared that every knight must answer for their own dark deeds while pursuing their sacred quests. He realized Dante was forming this order solely to keep Lady Yunju safe, hoping to control the actions of those he could not watch. Our hero promised to guide them all toward becoming High Lords. He hoped the maiden would be safe, though her terrified expression suggested that she would never want to be near his power again. He walked toward her, wishing to prove that he never truly wanted to encourage the use of these cursed stones. As a mysterious lady watched from afar, Dante knew the coming days would be the ultimate test of his true character. Night fell over the kingdom as our exhausted hero finally returned to his humble home, ending a long and difficult day. So that's it, trust me. His journey has only just begun. All right, you and I are about to see a long day turn into a total nightmare for our hero, as the carriage collapsed right there. But just when he started thinking about sleeping on the spot, Arthur lost himself in his thoughts. Earlier that night, Elara thanked him and Tristan from her heart before stating that she would continue her way home alone from here on. But she then looked at Arthur with sad eyes, as he was the one who turned their late friend into a dicer. Our hero stayed silent as she blamed him for the changes at the academy. She then asked if her boyfriend was also a dicer, fearing the worst. Arthur then remembered that the girl didn't witness him using his secret abilities. So he lied, stating that Tristan never used a dice. But just then, she asked where he found his first one. Arthur claimed it fell from the heavens. Silence settled between Elara and him, leaving her looking completely disappointed by his answer. With that, Elara went on her way. They watched her figure walk away into the darkness. Tristan asked Arthur if hiding the truth was pointless, since it would be unveiled eventually. This left our protagonist in total silence. Tristan decided to drop the matter and ask the hero if he truly meant to form such a knightly order. Arthur confirmed it, making Tristan reveal they shared the same view, which left the protagonist feeling very confused. Arthur demanded an explanation, but the rank knight looked troubled. "Pay attention, this is where the dice secrets get dark." Tristan asked how he really got his dice before revealing they never appear from thin air. In the end, Tristan revealed he wasn't the first to wield the dice, leaving Arthur speechless and totally shocked. Back in the present, our hero was still lost in his own thoughts, thinking about the one he stole the dice from and all the issues he had to face until now. After this adventure, a new week started. All the squires were glad to see Arthur again. Our hero was quickly surrounded by students and admirers wanting to join his order. Embarrassed by the attention, the young man asked them to calm down. But our hero was more concerned about Alara, who didn't even grace him with a look today. More people began to gather around him, asking all sorts of questions to get his attention, as well as asking him for magic dice. One student even suggested a special uniform for the order members with a fish logo on it, which really didn't convince the protagonist one bit. They began to ask which physical ability they should focus on and how he chose to boost his agility. Everyone was trying to get his attention, using every way possible. The embarrassed protagonist had no choice but to accept all of their demands. Suddenly, a girl stated that this meant Arthur agreed to spend the weekend with her. The young man raised his head, confused. A beautiful girl stood there claiming to have his word as she gave him an innocent smile. That small blush on her face. Arthur didn't know what to say before finally asking the girl who she was. She just said she would send him a letter later. Just when he realized she already had his contact, she ran away, preventing the protagonist from uttering a single word of protest. One student was intrigued about this mysterious girl. Another revealed he was surprised to learn this was actually their classmate, Maya. As Arthur tried to recall her name, the boys discussed how she was unrecognizable due to the dice. "You and I know they change people, but this is next level. She even vanished from the academy when the power first started spreading." The entire class was absolutely shocked to learn this was Maya. They still had trouble remembering her. The girl was first known as 𝑳𝒐𝒌. The students remembered her as the plain girl with glasses who spent all her days studying and hiding away. He was shocked seeing how much she had changed, as she had become totally unrecognizable now. Arthur recalled meeting her once. His classmates began to laugh when one revealed he used to call her a pig. They talked about how disappointing it was that the awkward girl only became pretty through the power of the dice, comparing her to an unused lottery ticket. But just then, one pointed out how even nobles use magic to change, and that they should salute her efforts. It must have been challenging to change like that. They began to discuss how she must have finished many quests. One revealed he rarely received any, pointing out how odd that was. The student, aware that multiple people could take the same quest, he asked our hero if each person received unique tasks, but the protagonist wasn't sure. This shocked him, as even the order leader was unaware. He then begged Arthur to lend him any spare dice. The day went on. Arthur ignored Maya's letter to focus on his group. "Trust me, you and I need to see what happens next." "All right, you and I are about to see a classic encounter go completely sideways." Dante gathered his courage to greet her, fully expecting an awkward moment. But to his total shock, she walked right past him without even a glance. Stunned, he tried to convince himself she just missed him, right as two young initiates caught his eye. She asked if Dante had received her secret letter, leaving him scrambling to find the right words. Meanwhile, Elena was lost in thought, remembering the cruel whispers of noble girls behind her back. She thought about the strange requests for help she had received and the growing tension within the academy walls that seemed to follow her everywhere she went lately. A girl in spectacles demanded Elena hand over her runes, which left her stunned. Then, she opened her strongbox to find her precious music book completely shredded. Scrawled across the cover were insults. calling her a stuck-up noble who thought she was too perfect to let anyone else succeed. Alina took a deep breath, trying to push back the darkness and ignore the spiteful words. Reaching the choir hall, she threw open the doors, quickly apologizing to the room for her tardiness. But the hall was dead silent and empty. A heavy sense of dread washed over her just as two female rune-wielders spotted her and slowed their pace. They recognized Alina as the target from last week's royal quest, mocking her for her terrible luck. They whispered about her arrogance, fueled by rumors that she looked down on everyone at the academy. Word was she felt too superior to even use her runes. The girls wondered if they should terrorize her to steal them, ignoring the strict laws of Dante's guild. Watch closely. One girl simply didn't care about the guild's strict rules. Anxious, Alina pulled out her messaging slate to contact Arthur about the empty choir hall. He replied that it probably wasn't a practice day, but with the grand competition looming, she knew that couldn't be right. As she waited and asked for his location, the heavy wooden doors suddenly creaked open once again. Relief hit her, thinking the rest of the choir had finally arrived. It wasn't them. Alina watched in confusion as three complete strangers marched into the empty room. These rune-wielders claimed to be initiates with a question, but their presence only made her more anxious. The leader mocked the fallen noble for staring at her own reflection, while the others struggled to contain their nasty laughter. Alina froze in terror as the girl flashed a wicked smile and produced a sharp razor blade, clearly intending to do harm. Right then, a student passing through the corridor heard Alina's desperate cries for help coming from inside. Recognizing the voice immediately, Mia charged into the room and stopped dead, horrified by the scene unfolding before her. Spotting the steel blade, Mia watched as the bullies pinned Alina down, desperately trying to hold her limbs still to torment her. Through her tears, the girl looked up to see her classmates standing firm in the doorway. One bully barked a warning at Mia, brandishing the razor. Alina could only watch in silence as the attacker flinched under Mia's cold stare. But then, to everyone's shock, Mia simply turned around and began to walk out of the room. As she walked, Mia heard the bullies' taunting laughter, mocking her for being too cowardly to intervene. That's when Mia suddenly stopped. Annoyed, she knew she couldn't just walk away from what was right. She stormed back inside, demanding they stop, but the girl with the razor lunged at her. Mia countered instantly, with a bone-shattering kick to the girl's wrist. The blade clattered to the floor as the bully screamed in agony. Mia looked at them coldly, asking if they truly wanted to continue this fight. Terrified, the attackers scrambled out of the room, leaving Mia alone with a trembling Alina who tried to thank her. I know what you're thinking. A moment of peace. Not quite. Mia suddenly explodes in rage, screaming at Alina for being such easy prey with those unused runes. As Alina stammered an apology, Mia's eyes drifted to the fallen razor blade, while she asked if Alina was actually hurt. The girl confirmed she wasn't injured. Mia bluntly stated that they were even now, leaving Alina looking completely bewildered by her words. The rune wielder revealed she was Mia, and Alina was genuinely relieved to see her old friend. Alina admitted she'd been worried during Mia's long absence and was shocked to see her as a rune wielder. But Mia found it ironic that she didn't even notice how much her own personality had shifted. She wasn't like the other students, who were already spreading vicious rumors. Alina said she preferred the old Mia, but the warrior wouldn't hear it. She simply remarked that the stunned girl was still as weak and naive as she had always been. And with those final, cold words, Mia turned and walked away. As she left, she warned Alina to learn how to defend herself against hostile rune-wielders, because next time, she wouldn't be there to help. Alina could only nod in agreement. Before vanishing, Mia paused to ask one final question. She wanted to know exactly what the girl thought about Dante. Elsewhere, a stone sphere dropped through the iron hoop, signaling a quest completed, and the manifestation of even more glowing runes. 𝒐𝒔𝒆 and Porthos each claimed a new blue rune. And trust me, you and I can see Dante is starting to realize his guild might be crumbling under these endless quests. While one young noble bragged about the many quests he had finished, his envious friend realized he had not received a single one. Now, you and I know how it feels when the game master plays favorites, while everyone else prays for a massive event to drop some serious loot. Inside the conservatory, Alara pondered her feelings for Alistair, eventually admitting she saw him only as a companion, though Maya pressed her to see if there was something more hidden beneath the surface. Alara confessed that Alistair was a precious friend until the absolute madness that erupted last week. Maya assumed it was because he had saved her life. But Alara questioned if he only protected her to satisfy a secret quest of his own. Here is where it gets tense. Maya exploded in rage because Alara reduced his genuine bravery to a simple task. Alara stood in shock upon learning the order was formed solely to protect her, leaving her in stunned silence. Ultimately, Maya was relieved she only saw Alistair as a friend, though she admitted that being a player was no sin, which is why she could not understand why Alara rejected the magic dice. Since the other girls lacked her grace and beauty, they struggled through life in whatever ways they possibly could. As she walked away, Maya noted that Alara was blessed with every gift this life could offer, leaving the young singer standing there, completely speechless. With frustration boiling over, Alara muttered that her life was far from the perfect dream everyone imagined. Dark, heavy clouds gathered in the sky, signaling to the students that a storm was fast approaching. Alistair watched the sky with a heavy heart, while over in the great library, Tristan obsessed over his research. The game master noted the young noble was pushing himself way too hard, especially since he already had 5 available quests that could make him an elite ranker, before mocking Tristan for trying to start over since time never moves backward, while inviting him to a more enjoyable game. Tristan did not deny it. Yet he remained certain he could rewrite destiny, leaving the game master amused by his attempt to alter the past. Let us pause for a second. Look at that sad nostalgia in his eyes as the first drops start to fall. He remembered that fateful night when a stranger suggested Tristan surrender his life since he clearly did not want it. The mysterious figure saved him from a certain death, declaring that while he had met his fall today, he would also rise. Tristan recalled meeting his enigmatic savior again, surrounded by unconscious foes, as the man told him there was no need for fear. The stranger commanded Julian to step forward instead, since he had pledged his very life to the cause. He slammed his hands against the table, forcing the painful memories back into the dark. The school bell echoed as the rain poured down, leaving our hero stranded without a cloak or an umbrella. But as he drifted away, Maya suddenly snapped him back to reality, offering to share her umbrella as the heavy rain continued to fall. Snails enjoyed this weather, while normal people just went about their mundane day. Maya finally broke the silence, asking Alistair if he hated sharing his umbrella, which he nervously denied before she told him he needed to get much closer. Now, the two knights stood shoulder to shoulder, and Alistair could not stop blushing at his first close encounter. He tried breaking the ice. He asked how many magic dice she had collected, and when exactly her journey began, which made her expression turn sour. She revealed her path started the very day Barnaby fell to his death, making things incredibly awkward for our hero. Alistair let out a forced laugh and quickly asked for her thoughts on the order she had recently joined. To his shock, she was not a member at all, making Alistair feel like he was losing a desperate duel. Just as he prepared one last attempt at conversation, Maya cut him off with a serious question of her own. Alistair was absolutely stunned when she asked if he loved Alara, stumbling over his words with a bright red face as he started making frantic excuses. He claimed that since she was already seeing Tristan, he would never even think about pursuing a romance. The nervous young man insisted she was just a friend, and that every boy in the kingdom was captivated by her. Maya giggled at his reaction, pointing out that he was absolutely terrible at hiding how he truly felt. Alistair whispered that those feelings were ancient history, though his eyes told a much sadder story as Maya questioned him. He confessed that he fell for Alara because she treated everyone with the same kindness, regardless of their status. You and I know she is someone special, and that is where we leave Alistair as he remembers her kindness. All right, you and I are about to watch Alaric snap back to reality as he spots a group of local bullies. After making her hold his umbrella, he sprinted off to protect a small boy being tormented by older bullies. Alaric comforted the sobbing little boy as the bullies sneered, telling the child he would never be allowed to play with them again. Watching his kindness, a faint smile touched Alina's lips as she shielded both Alaric and the boy from the falling rain. Alaric explained he saw these runestones as a way to become a true protector, finally capturing Alina's full attention and deep respect. He tried to dismiss his dreams as foolish, but a blushing Alina admitted she truly admired the man he was becoming. The sudden compliment left both of them looking completely flustered and red-faced. A shocked Alaric thanked her. As the storm faded, he returned her umbrella and stated clearly that this was the place where they should part ways. Alina shyly offered to walk him home. Panic set in as Alaric stammered that his neighborhood was dangerous, and he lived all alone in the dark, words that Alina took in a very different and awkward way. He scrambled to apologize for the misunderstanding. Now pay attention here. Alina actually offered to cook him dinner since he was home alone, her face turning bright red. Before he could even answer, the rain vanished. Alaric blinked as the final stray droplet landed softly against his cheek. The storm broke, revealing a soft, blue sky stretching out over the quiet kingdom streets. Alaric realized the rain was gone and shared a loud laugh with Alina. She folded her umbrella, saying it was useless now, but she truly enjoyed every moment she spent with him. To his shock, Alina admitted this was the first time she had ever shared an umbrella with a man. He was left totally speechless. As they parted, she reminded him of his promise to meet her again over the coming weekend. Suddenly, Alina remembered that Alaric had asked her thoughts on the mysterious order they were part of. After a long, heavy silence, she confessed she could not truly grasp what it stood for. She called it a type of Avalon. Alaric watched her leave, deeply curious about what she meant by such a perfect, impossible place. Later that night, Alaric reflected on his journey as a rune-bearer and how Alina saw the hero hidden inside his heart. He knew his former self would never believe the powerful hero he had managed to become. None of this would be possible without Clara, the girl who wrongly believed he only ever helped her for his own gain. He sat in the dark, trying to remember the exact words the female rune-bearer had spoken. A sudden notification flashed, a legendary quest for a golden runestone from the master. Meanwhile, Clara stared at Alaric's discarded jacket with deep, wondering eyes. Let's pause for a second. Alaric was busy searching ancient scrolls for the true meaning of that word, Avalon. Avalon meant an ideal, perfect place for everyone. But Alaric saw the darker meaning, a place of total solitude. He finally understood the lonely truth Alina was trying to tell him. At the academy next day, a stranger asked Alaric if they knew each other. Alaric said no, which strangely made the boy very happy. It turned out he was a classmate who sat right in front of him every single day. Silas had used countless runestones to completely rewrite his face, proving he had finished many dangerous, secret trials already. Nearby, another rune-bearer was lecturing her friends on how to use their magic to fix every single flaw on their faces. An arm wrestling match ended with the table splintering into pieces. The loser demanded to know how many points the winner had dumped into raw strength. A teacher yelled about the broken furniture, while another student leaned over to whisper to his friend. He planned to use his blue runestones to cheat on the surprise exam, having boosted his luck stat to ensure he never failed a single test again. Almost every student at the academy used runestone magic now. It had become the absolute foundation of their entire society. Still, Clara refused to touch the stones. Alaric decided to let it go for now and deal with her later. During a match on the fields, Silas ran up to a tired Alaric to show him something shocking on his magic mirror. Silas was obsessed with the golden stone, wondering if it granted legendary powers just like the ones Alaric used. Alaric was stunned to see a new quest had appeared for a mysterious, unknown type of runestone. A crowd of rune-bearers swarmed Alaric to catch a glimpse for themselves, but he was only focused on the dangerous task required to obtain it. Silas suddenly looked pale, hesitating to show Alaric exactly what the master was demanding they do for the prize. Alaric was left totally shocked to find Clara standing right behind him, demanding they go find a place to talk in private immediately. He blushed and agreed to follow her. Meanwhile, Elena was returning with cups of cider when she spotted something that made her heart stop in shock. "Trust me, you and I need to see what happens when she starts spying on them. All right, you and I are diving into a world where magical runes mean everything, starting with Arthur's confusion over Alara's mysterious gift. Alara returns his travel cloak and finally finds her voice. She sincerely apologizes for being so distant lately and thanks him for shielding her from those thugs. She mentions how he formed the order, specifically, to stop such darkness from spreading again, causing Arthur to apologize, admitting he simply was not thinking clearly. So she kindly insisted there was no need. Our blushing knight thanked her for understanding. When she asked if he was wounded, the boy tried to show off his strength, making her laugh. He boasted that he held more runes than anyone, sharing a laugh with Alara while Beatrice watched them in silence. Arthur noted it had been far too long since they spoke like this, then asked if bullies were still targeting her. Alara froze as her expression darkened, remembering her ruined songbook and the cruelty she had endured. Thinking of the younger girls and how Arthur's order is her only shield, she lied and said she was fine. Our confused hero then asked about the day of her choir competition, which she said was this Sunday. Beatrice listened closely, as he promised to be there. However, the singer revealed she would not be performing, which shocked him given how hard she had trained. Alara confessed that every other member had abandoned the circle before walking away into the hall. When Arthur demanded an explanation and tried to stop her by grabbing her shoulder to keep her from leaving, he was stunned to find her eyes swimming with tears. Arthur felt terrible and apologized, saying he only wanted to help. He asked what was truly wrong. Alara revealed the other girls stopped training the moment they became bearers. She felt abandoned, as even her partner began to change, wondering why everything had to end so bitterly. This left Beatrice lost in her own thoughts until the bell rang, signaling the end of their break. The master commented on the strange weather, warning the class to focus on their final exams before opening their scrolls. Arthur tried focusing on his ancient studies. Suddenly, every magical artifact in the room starts to vibrate at once, infuriating the master. Now pay attention, because a massive trial has been issued to every student except our Arthur. Beatrice checked her device to see the mission. It was a race to the courtyard, promising runes to the first 20. Beatrice hesitated since the trial was beginning right in the middle of a lecture. Suddenly, a student stood up, claimed he needed the infirmary, and bolted out before the master could even speak. The hall was suddenly filled with the noise of dragging chairs, as the rest of the class fled with pathetic excuses. The master stood there powerless, unable to stop the frantic students from escaping. Just like that, the grand hall was left completely empty. Beatrice told Arthur to follow, but he was frozen in panic. Julian walked past him without saying a word. When Beatrice warned they would fail the trial, Arthur told her to go alone, but she refused to leave him. She was baffled when the young man explained that the situation was wrong because he never received the collective trial. You see that look on his face? Something is seriously wrong here. Arthur's scream is completely ignored. Meanwhile, the students raced mindlessly toward the grounds, while the master desperately ordered them to return to class. The instructor eventually chased after them, telling the 3 remaining students to stay put until she returned for them. Arthur began to tremble in pure frustration. A shocked Beatrice asked why he was being excluded from the new trial. The girl demanded to know why the game master was driving Arthur into madness. But the hooded figure claimed he was not the villain and had a valid reason for this. Despite his absolute power over the trials, the game master revealed Arthur was suffering a penalty he deserved, leaving the boy lost. With no answers, Beatrice rushed out of the hall. She tried to intercept Julian, convinced he was a bearer who knew exactly what was happening in this academy. The young man stopped and remained silent before declaring he had no reason to help them even if he knew the truth. Beatrice realized that Julian definitely knew the truth. The boy finally admitted that something was horribly wrong with this current trial. She demanded to know why people like her received more missions. She also asked why she was granted the trial for the golden rune before any other bearer. But he claimed her promotion trial is why he won't speak. So, what do you and I think? Is this entire magical game rigged from the start? All right, stick with me as we watch a high-stakes power struggle unfold between these noble heirs. Sir Alistair cuts the tension, refusing any help. Arthur claimed to have a theory, and if his guess was actually correct, it meant that the royal tasks sent to Arthur were slowly vanishing, which left the young squire in a state of shock. Meanwhile, at the academy grounds, all the rune bearers scrambled to secure one of the first 20 victorious spots in the race. Paige counted 17 students who had finished the race, when suddenly, an unknown hand grabbed the girl by her shoulder. It was none other than Silas who threw the girl aside in order to take her place. The boy was happy to have secured 18th. But just as he reached for his prize, someone quickly snatched the enchanted rune away from him. Silas begged the leader of the noble house to give him back his rune, but the bully quickly claimed the prize, stating the owner is whoever uses it first. But just when the boy started to demand his rune back, the leader knocked him out with a single blow, looking completely satisfied with his own power. This marked his third victim, as he was tasked by the Archmage to steal runes from 5 warriors to complete his promotion. With that, he began hunting for his fourth target. One knight looked disappointed since no other tasks had appeared yet. So, a second student advised him to show a little more patience. Pay attention here because this next part changes everything. To everyone's total surprise, a mysterious figure suddenly starts climbing the grand staircase toward the crowd. Meanwhile, a shocked Millicent demanded an explanation as to why both elite knights were no longer receiving royal tasks. Alistair stated that Arthur didn't receive the Yonju task last week, which he unintentionally confirmed with his silence, recalling a cryptic old warning. The late Sir Dyer once stated that every bearer receives tasks that reflect their true identity. At first, the protagonist compared it to a game where one selects the lineage of their character. But he then began to wonder if there were hidden conditions. Alistair speculated the runes were crafted from a unique energy source, which left Lady Millicent feeling completely intrigued by the mystery. The young man theorized the obvious reason behind his transformation and receiving fewer quests was that he himself was simply not the same as he once was. Meanwhile, the student continued up the stairs. One of the knights recognized him as the Academy's own Grand Chancellor. After clearing his throat, the Chancellor boldly announced the start of the Great Equinox Festival before ordering the baffled crowd of students to begin clapping. This enraged the knights. But as they rushed forward, he claimed the Archmage himself had personally given him the duty of announcing this quest. The Chancellor then showed his device as proof that the Archmage ordered him to announce a quest about another quest. But the rune bearers, used to private messages, complained that the official had to be the one to announce this one. And so he resumed his speech, forcing all the irritated students to clap their hands together. The Grand Master was using the Chancellor as a middleman to announce his newest and most dangerous quest to date. Everyone was left confused when asked to look at the warrior standing right beside them. You and I both know what happens when the Archmage sets a trap like this. Defeating 3 peers earns 2 runes, but betraying a friend earns 3. Meanwhile, Millicent was stunned since Alistair was receiving fewer tasks because he was no longer the same man. But the protagonist explained that the entire situation was more complicated. In the past, Alistair desired to transform himself, which he did by becoming a bearer. But the more he became his ideal self, the less he had to actually accomplish. At the same time, the students were baffled by the Archmage's new fighting quest. Some thought it was a joke, but others saw that the orders were clear. The Grand Master stated this was almost the same as any regular race for ranks. But just as one knight mentioned their guild was different, an attacker charged from the shadows, hitting him far too late. And just like that, the student fell to a surprise strike. Meanwhile, Alistair wondered what could have changed about him. But just then, all 3 rune-bearers arrived at the exact same conclusion. Meanwhile, one student began mercilessly beating his classmate, leaving the poor boy begging for mercy with a mouthful of blood. The victim recognized his attacker as his own classmate, begging his old friend to stop this madness immediately. The attacker refused to listen, because the Archmage promised runes to anyone who could defeat a person they were already familiar with. This made the fallen bearer fear the absolute worst, when suddenly, the attacker himself was surprised by a brutal kick to the face. The wounded knight gasps for air, thanking his savior. "Trust me, you and I just witnessed a turn that changes everything." "All right, you and I are about to witness a savior turn into a nightmare." Tristan looked terrified, asking his protector if the threat was gone, only to be met with a sudden and violent betrayal. Meanwhile, Dante was calculating how their magical energy was constantly fading away. Tristan suddenly felt a surge of memory, realizing the true fuel was human desire. Rewind to 9 months ago, when Tristan was desperately trying to reach Malachi. Young Tristan had to scream the boy's name just to get him to take off his headphones and listen for once. Malachi was always lost in his own world of music, seeing nothing wrong with staying isolated, which honestly drove the other knights crazy. But Tristan wasn't there to argue. He had vital intel about how their royal quests actually worked. Malachi's grin vanished instantly as he asked what secrets had been uncovered. He explained that these quests are powered by raw hunger, controlling everything from difficulty to the loot. Tristan figured this out after watching Lord Wu and the other high-ranking knights very closely. The elite knight agreed, praising Tristan for boosting his intelligence stats, which made the young boy beam with pride. The rookie knight then continued his explanation, stating that the elite, who was receiving fewer quests, gifted him a rune just to use him as a tool for more power. That statement silenced the shocked elite knight, but Tristan promised to share every relic he found, since he was the one who helped him start this journey. Malachi explained that desire lives deep in the soul, and because it depends on the person holding it, it will always demand more the moment it is fed. Only a perfect ideal can ever truly stop it. Tristan couldn't grasp the meaning and asked why he was chosen to be a knight at all, but Malachi refused to give him a straight answer that day. The elite stood up, revealing the sovereign promise to rewrite the world's laws once enough knights were gathered. He then asked if Tristan was curious about the future. This left young Tristan in silence. Malachi excitedly proposed finding all the elite knights to form a secret alliance, suggesting Tristan should change his look to finally shock the bullies back at the manor. With that, he suggested they go meet the others, which Tristan happily accepted. But from that moment on, Tristan could no longer see into the dark heart of Malachi's true plans. Now pay attention, because when he finally understood, it was absolutely devastating. A scream of agony ripped through the gray sky. A boy was hoisted up by his neck, begging for his life before collapsing right at Tristan's feet in a broken heap. The young man started shivering in Malachi's cold presence. Another knight shouted for the girl to run as he prepared his magic. The elite activated his special gift, tearing chunks of stone from the ground. Suddenly, he was surrounded by lethal, floating projectiles ready to strike. The lady knight used the distraction to escape, leaping onto the roofs of the nearby castle. The elite launched his assault, aiming straight for Malachi. Despite the massive effort, the target vanished into thin air. The projectiles shattered the ground, leaving the knight confused and vulnerable. It was like his opponent had completely ceased to exist. But as he desperately searched for his foe, Malachi suddenly began to materialize right behind him. He whispered that he was far beyond the other elites, who were totally helpless against his power over time. He grabbed the knight's throat and snapped it like a twig, tossing him down before Tristan's feet. "Trust me, you're going to want to see this." The dying knight begged Tristan to run for his life, while Malachi calmly approached the last survivor, telling him not to be afraid. He told him there was no reason to fear his own master. But Tristan was paralyzed with terror. Malachi watched in disappointment as he froze time itself once again. Tristan tried to sprint away, but Malachi suddenly appeared right in his path. Before he could scream, the monster grabbed him tightly by the collar. He pleaded for the man to release him. But Malachi claimed that the one who learned the truth about the relics had betrayed him first. He argued that it was the knight who destroyed their secret group. Tristan fought back with everything he had, but his strikes were useless against such power. The monster looked at the crying boy, explaining that the first relic boosts human strength, while the second allows a knight to transcend mortality and become something much more. But before he could reveal the secrets of the third stage, the Lady Knight ambushed Malachi from the shadows, forcing him to let Tristan go. The impact nearly knocked the powerful warrior off his feet. She looked at him and yelled for him to escape. "So you and I leave him as he teleports away, gritting his teeth in pain. Trust me, you and I are about to witness a chase that defies magic." The boy gasped for air, believing distance alone could shield him from a master of time. But as he turned back to see the duel's end, Tristan froze, watching in horror as the female knight fell. He let out a scream of pure agony. His rivals sneered that it was finally over, claiming distance meant nothing to a master of the relics. No matter how far Tristan fled, he would always be within reach of his shadows. Even if he lived as a peasant and tried to start over, the cursed relics would find his hiding spot eventually. There was no running from a past that was already written in stone. Back in the present, Alaric was stunned to see the veteran knight shivering with fear. For the first time, Tristan had lost his cool completely. He was sweating and trembling, caught in the grip of a total panic. Morgana and Alaric grew worried, stepping forward to check on their trembling friend. The knight insisted he was fine and told them to mind their own business. But Alaric knew better. Tristan's face was a map of terror. Still, the elite warrior just claimed he had been hit by a sudden, violent illness out of nowhere. Tristan turned away, thanking them for their concern, but making it clear that his burdens were for his shoulders alone to carry. But watch Alaric. Knowing the danger involved Tristan's dark history, he argued that any threat involving the magic relics concerned every single person who wielded their dangerous power. Still, the knight stood firm. Some secrets were better left buried for the safety of everyone involved in this game. He warned them that master knights must never form alliances, leaving both Morgana and Alaric scratching their heads in total confusion. Just then, our hero turned to the Lady Knight to ask about the elite master tier ranking system. She admitted she only had the promotion scrolls. When the curious boy tried to glimpse her magic scroll, the embarrassed Alara refused, though he wouldn't stop pestering her to see the secret details. Alara snapped that it was improper for Alaric to read her private scrolls like they were lovers. The confused Alaric simply said he was curious about it. Her sudden blushing caught him off guard as she quickly tried to change the entire subject. Suddenly, she heard shouting from the courtyard. The racing trial was still happening. They quickly hurried back into the main training hall to see. Alaric noticed Isabella's seat was empty. Alara rushed to the balcony and gasped at the chaos unfolding down below. She begged him to look. To his absolute horror, an all-out war had erupted among the squires right in the middle of the grounds. He wondered what kind of trial would force these warriors to slaughter each other with such ruthless, cold-blooded intensity. Now check this out. The House Lord was loving the mayhem, snatching up relics until he was only one away from the golden prize. When the rightful owner tried to reclaim his stolen relic, the thief answered with a heavy blow to the stomach. Nearby, a bully who had tried to cut Isabella with a blade was now dragging another girl by her hair, tearing out clumps as the poor soul cried out in absolute agony. The attacker looked down with ice-cold eyes as the girl crawled away, begging for a mercy that wasn't coming. In the end, a sobbing girl abandoned the trial and her magic stones, which the bully found absolutely pathetic and weak. The victim swore to never let greed blind her again, screaming for help when she saw Isabella standing right in front of her like an angel. Alaric panicked seeing her surrounded by such dangerous relic hunters. He charged down to save Isabella, while Alara yelled for him to wait for her to catch up. Just like that, Morgana was left standing alone and shocked in the quiet hall. Meanwhile, the girl wept as she apologized to Isabella and begged for help. Isabella promised her everything would be fine. The bully recognized her old target and began mocking her, demanding she hand over the new girl. She grew furious when Isabella refused to leave her friend behind to the wolves. Isabella pulled out a vial of spores, calling the bully the only monster here. The thug realized she was being threatened with alchemical dust and laughed it off, claiming a master couldn't be stopped by toys. But Isabella stood firm. She was certain that even the strongest warriors weren't immune to the sting of these spores. Despite her fear, the brave girl was ready to protect her friend. Just then, the Grandmaster appeared, annoyed by the brawling squires, and ordered them to immediately cease their mindless violence and return to order. Isabella jumped as the man expressed shock that his star pupil was involved in this savagery. He ordered her back to her quarters while trying to break up the rest of the fighting. So, she warned him to be careful. You and I see the bully taking this chance to charge the distracted girl. At the same moment, Alaric sprinted down the stone steps to rescue his beloved from the danger. While Morgana stood alone, she thought about how Alaric never looked back. He had mentioned how the secret desires of every relic wielder were now beginning to twist the very nature of their trials. All right, you and I are about to see if a simple quest at the protagonist's estate is what Lady Mayo truly wants. In that moment, she finally understood her feelings for Dante. Meanwhile, out in the castle corridors, Lord Tibin was ready to crush Murang. As soon as the rising night count triggered the grand hunt. Simultaneously, a brute tackled the young maiden, knocking her down and making her lose her protection charm. Yunju scrambled for her weapon while the crazed knight attacked. Panic set in as she reached for the charm. Now pay attention, because just as a fist aimed for her face, Dante suddenly appeared. Using his ultimate skill, he literally froze time itself, petrifying Yunju and the bully along with the instructors and all of the fighting knights. Mastering the ability, Dante spent all 40 of his saved attribute points just to hold this frozen moment for 40 seconds. He moved quickly to save Yunju and her comrade, before putting a final stop to these mindless brawls. But right then, amidst the frozen crowd, a dark shadow started to move. Our hero was positive he saw someone shifting. He stood there totally confused, seeing a moving person in stopped time, so he started calling out to them. No answer. He shouted again, but only the heavy silence of the time stop echoed back at him. The High Overseer joked that the top-tier knight was simply playing games after freezing the world. This made our young hero wonder if it was just a trick of his mind. All right, pay attention here. As the time freeze finally hits its limit and the world resumes for Yunju and her attacker, Dante's hand suddenly materializes to intercept that heavy fist. The attacker was stunned to see Dante materialize out of thin air to block her strike. Yunju stood there in shock. The female knight began to tremble as Dante, who refused to harm women, ordered her to back away. And just like that, she fled. The weeping girl then rushed to embrace her friend, apologizing for being so cold because she feared she wouldn't be strong enough to join their noble rank of the Dicer Knights. The maiden was truly thankful that Yunju had come to her aid. But she insisted Dante was the real savior, since she was too weak to protect anyone on her own. Yunju then asked the hero if he knew why the Overseer caused this chaos, and if he actually enjoyed it. Dante looked around, seeing two noble ladies fighting like savages. Nearby, the master tried to stop other knights from brawling, while Yunju wondered what the Overseer's true goal was. Suddenly, one student accidentally struck the instructor in the head with monstrous power. Everyone froze as the poor man collapsed to the stone floor. Dante, Yunju, and the boy who hit the master watched in total horror. None of them could believe a teacher had actually been hurt. The panicked opponent grabbed the boy's collar, but he swore he never meant to harm the instructor on purpose. Suddenly, Dante roared for everyone to end this madness. Everyone was stunned as the hero ordered them to stop fighting. One knight begged for more time to finish his foe, desperate for a prize, while Yunju pleaded with them to finally listen. Dante reminded them of the guild rules, the first being to never involve innocent civilians like the fallen teacher. At that moment, the boy's friend fled, passing by Lady Mio, who watched in silence. Dante declared he wouldn't tolerate such cruelty, and they should quit the trial if it meant hurting allies. Then someone yelled that more guards had finally arrived. The overseer was annoyed that the adults ruined his fun. Many students wanted the quest to end, but others like Sunsho hated being bossed around by the top-ranked hero. The boy was sure he would have finished more trials without Dante's interference. Sunsho suspected Dante only formed the guild to act as their leader and wished he had the same power. He remembered when Dante asked about his task. He couldn't reveal that his secret mission was to destroy the hero's guild and sow chaos among its noble members. Sunsho sat there, deep in his dark thoughts. Dante then stated the second rule, which is that every knight must carry the weight of their own actions, then asked who would take the blame for hurting their friends. The sun began to set over the principal's study. The principal was livid at the teachers for not figuring out why the students were acting so insane. They tried to explain themselves. And as we leave off, the master warns that anyone who rats him out loses their powers forever. Trust me, you and I need to see what happens next. All right, you and I are diving into a world of magic and deep betrayal. The headmaster only found protective seals when he inspected the magical crystals. The Great Hall fell into a heavy, disappointed silence. The council decided against punishment, since they were still mourning the squire's death, ending the expedition once and for all. Now check this out. While Arthur gave his speech, a rogue lord stole the fifth relic, laughing hysterically because he managed to snatch it right under their noses. He immediately activated them to complete his dark quest of taking 5 relics from other knights. With that, the Grand Arbiter gifted the rogue lord a legendary golden relic. The thief was ecstatic to finally join the High Knights and celebrate, knowing he could now wield powers like the great Arthur and Julian. Without hesitation, he cast the relic, desperate for the strength of a god. He was practically drooling over his new forbidden power. But when he saw his prize, the boy only found a strange crest, leaving him baffled. Now pay attention here. Back during the temporal stasis, before Arthur could save Alara from the brute, he saw a dark figure moving. But then, in that frozen chaos, he spotted a shadow standing among the knights. Our hero was absolutely stunned to find himself face to face with the traitor Mordred. Arthur demanded to know how the traitor was immune to the stasis spell while in shock. Mordred didn't bother to give a real answer, instead lunging forward and leaping high to deliver a devastating punch that shattered our hero's ribs, resulting in a truly catastrophic injury. Suddenly, Arthur woke up shivering. It was dawn, and he was relieved it was just a nightmare, until his message crystal glowed. Lady Mary had sent a pulse, checking to see if he had slept well last night. He checked his scroll. Arthur had a tournament for Thomas to attend, but on the other hand, he also had to spend his day with Lady Mary. That is it for today. And trust me, you and I are just getting started. Hit that bell for the next part.